March 2nd already, 2015, council meeting, we're about 5 after 7. Council started in camera at 4:30, and actually we started at 1 o'clock this afternoon doing strategic planning. So we're, if we start to fade as the evening goes on, you'll know why. We're starting with faith blessing, or a moment of silent reflection, and I believe we have Pastor Harry Zanting, yes, present. Welcome. Please, I'll get you to push the button so the little red light comes on. Great, thank you.
All right, it's my pleasure to lead you in this faith blessing. In one of the books of the Bible, in the book of Romans, it calls us to submit to the authorities over us. And one of the reasons is because they're God's servants to do us good. And I trust and I hope that you'll do us good, but I also know that doing good is sometimes difficult to discern what that looks like and how to do that, and it's not always well received when you do that. And so I'd like to ask for prayer, ask God to help us, help you guys with that. Let's pray. Lord God, goodness, you are a good God, and you call for us to be good people. And when we are leaders, as this city council is, to be good as well on behalf of the people they serve. Help them to do that. Help them to discern what goodness is and to have the courage to carry it out and to do that well. It is a complicated business, and so will you give wisdom this evening as they do their work. Amen.
Great, thank you. So I think we're at number 4, which is additional items. If I can just stop before we start, Council. Anybody that wants to follow along in our agenda, if you go to owensound.ca, then hit the button of where you want to live. Then under that, hit Council, and then under that, hit Council Minutes and Agendas. It'll take you through to today's date, and you can follow along and read all the things that we got to read over the weekend. So additional items, any? Scott?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Body. I do have an additional item tonight regarding new implementation on the source water.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary, so I think you're next.
Thank you, Worship. I have a quick report on a fire from February 5th on 2nd Avenue East and a comment on Works Department.
Great, thank you. Mike? Anyone at this end? No? Okay. Oh, Mr. Becking?
Your Worship, if Council would like, I'll provide an update on the current water situation. We
would like that. That'd be great, thank you. And I have, 2 items regarding a 75th anniversary of our local radio station, which is pretty neat, and a thank you for the media over the last few weeks. Next will be number 5, is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councilor McMahon.
Thank you, Worship. I declare a pecuniary interest on a matter on the in-camera agenda.
Great, thank you. Next is confirmation of minutes. So we're at paragraph 6. I think if you got those, Brian.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the strategic planning working session held on February 9th, 2015 as printed be adopted.
Okay, any comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 6B, this minutes of regular meeting.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on February 9th, 2015 as printed be adopted.
Comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 6C.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the public meeting held on February 9th, 2015 respecting zoning bylaw amendment number 15 as printed be adopted.
Great. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Down to, we still got more minutes when I flip the page. 6D.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the pre-budget meeting held on February 13th, 2015 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And 6E.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the pre-budget meeting held on February 18th, 2015, as printed, be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we're down to number 7, which is the resolution. Go ahead.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that City Council now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
And all in favor? Good. Carried. Thank you. So we're now on Committee of the Whole. Number 8 on our agenda is public meetings, and there are no public meetings, so that takes us to number 9. And we welcome John McLaughlin and Greg Fryer to talk about Habitat for Humanity.
Good evening,
Good
Your
evening.
Worship.
Welcome.
Thank you, and Council. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Greg Fryer, the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, and with me is John McLaughlin, our Partnerships Coordinator. And tonight we want to refresh your understanding about Habitat, who we are, our model in particular, and our plans for providing safe and affordable home ownership for families in need in our community. It's been a number of years since Habitat has built a house here in Owen Sound. It's been almost 5 years to be exact. And our plan is to come back and be building houses again here in the city of Owen Sound. We all know the need is great. And recently, last month, the Grey County Housing Director released a report on the recent wait list for rent geared to income housing. Showed that the number of applicants on their list here in Owen Sound is 278 people. Of that number, 68 are families. That's a huge need. And at Habitat, we have on file right now over 60 applicants, 60 families who are interested in partnering with us to own a home built by Habitat. Of that 68, 12 are from Owen Sound here. So the need is great. And if we look to the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation's definition of core housing need, they have 3 criteria. Adequacy, number 1. Is the living conditions structurally sound? Is it safe? Is it healthy for the family to live in? Number 2, is it suitable? And that focuses on the size. Is there enough bedrooms for all the family members to use? And then lastly, is it affordable? And they use the criteria of 30% of gross household income being paid on housing as that criteria. If families are paying more than that, then they declare that family is in need of affordable housing. So the need is great when we look at all the numbers. We look at how the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation defines core housing need. The need is great, and we believe that the Habitat model is a significant part of the solution. It's not the whole solution to the affordable housing crisis, but it's part of the solution of reducing the core housing need in our community. I know in the notes that you received in your agenda talks about our model. I just want to briefly go through it and just highlight a couple of things that Habitat partners with families who, with lower or modest income, want to build and purchase a home from us that is simple in design, that is affordable. And we make it affordable by, in the model, by offering the house for sale to our families at 0 down payment, 0 interest. And we hold the mortgage that's paid back to Habitat, and the payments are set at 25% of their gross household income. So that makes it affordable. That allows them to have funds to pay for other things as they raise their children and afford other things in their family. A lot of our families that we meet and interview for Habitat House are struggling with high rent. They can't afford their rent, and they don't have funds left over for food and for the other necessities of life, or to save a little bit of money for their children's education down the road. So this model not only helps provide a safe and affordable home for families today, it helps them build an asset for the future. They're purchasing a house that will appreciate in value, and as they pay off the mortgage, then they have an asset that they can use down the road in the future. Further benefits: our families no longer need to rely on social assistance for housing, subsidized rent, A lot of our families come from having rent that's been subsidized. They move into a Habitat house, and that subsidized rent unit now becomes available for another family. And as well, our families then begin to contribute to the community through the payment of property taxes. And we think that's a win-win for both the families and for our community. Further, the CMHC has done several studies about, on families that have purchased a Habitat house, and they've discovered that families have improved their health, children's level of confidence has increased, children's performance in school has increased, and as well, 89% of the families that were studied reported that their lives overall have improved greatly. And we think that that's good news that we can provide for families who are struggling with housing today. Our model is sustainable in that, as I mentioned before, that the mortgage payments that our families pay come back to Habitat, and we use those funds to build houses in the future. This year, we will have received mortgage payments from our current families that will fund at least the construction of one house. And that will just increase on, and as more dollars come into our revolving fund, as we call it, then more houses will be built in the future. So it's sustainable. So money that's spent on houses today isn't just spent and gone. It goes into the revolving fund and comes back through the mortgage payments to help fund houses in the future. In addition to that, our restores, we have 3 restores in Grey and Bruce, one outside of Owen Sound, Hanover, and now a third one in Port Elgin, which just opened last year. The net income from our stores pays all of the administrative costs of our organization. So every dollar donated goes directly into our home building program. Unlike other charities that take a percentage of their donations and use it on their administrative or operating costs. And not only that, but last year our restores did so incredibly well that we were able to move $50,000 from the net income directly into our home building program. That's in addition to paying all of our administrative costs. So our restores are really our major fundraising arm of our organization, and we're proud that we can say that they provide funding to help us build houses. I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to share a few things about what we're doing in the future.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. So, Habitat for Humanity Grey Bruce was one of the first Habitat for Humanities in Canada. Habitat for Humanity came to Canada in 1987, which was the year that Habitat for Humanity Grey Bruce was first formed in Owen Sound. So we're one of the oldest Habitat for Humanities. Since that day, we've built 35 homes. Doesn't sound like much, but when you look at it, when we first started, we built one house, and then we waited 3 or 4 years, then we built another house, then we waited 2 or 3 years, and we built another house, because we weren't geared up to do it at too fast a speed. Well, we're there now, and we're building every year now. In fact, under the leadership of Greg Fryer, in 2012 we built 4 houses. In 2013 we built 4 houses. In 2014 we built 2 houses. And now in 2015 we have 2 houses on the plan. So we are now building every year. We've picked up our rate of building, and it's tough to keep up with, but we're doing our best that we can. We hope that in 2016, which we'll have plans together for that in a very short order. Okay, during that time we have served 58 adults and 86 children have moved into the Habitat houses. Greg says the children do better in school, the children have better health because they're living in a safe house. Now I should tell you another great benefit of our houses, that the spin-off, you've all heard about the crisis of heating right now with low-income families and burning furniture and things like this. The cost to heat one house in Hanover in January of this year was under $60 because our houses are built well with extra insulation, etc. Okay, so in order to keep up with our rate of building, we need 5 things. 1, we need families. That's the most important part of it. We need families in need. And as Greg says, that's not a problem. We've developed a waiting list without even trying. For years we didn't keep our names, so in the last 2 years we've been storing the list and keeping a waiting list, and it's grown to over 60 families. Without any attempt, you haven't heard us publicize, apply to Habitat, and we've got 12 names, families in Owen Sound alone, and we haven't even tried yet. So we recently tried in Sauble Beach, and we got applications from about 14 families just for Sauble Beach alone. So without trying, we've got applications, so there is a need. We need land. Now, the good news is we're currently working on some lots in Owen Sound. I will tell you, I've been very impressed with the support we've got from staff and people trying to help us find land. And we are working on some lots right now that are being either donated to us or sold to us at a reasonable cost. We haven't finalized them yet, so we can't tell you where they are, but we hope we'll have some news on that in the next couple of months. We need donated materials and services. The good news is we have a lot of people waiting to help us. We just signed up a vinyl siding supporter for the future for all of Canada. We've got people donating drywall, we've got people donating paint, we've got people donating flooring, and they're just waiting for us to get going. So once we've got the land and the families, we're ready to go, okay? But we do need a little bit more money, and money in addition to what Greg referred to that comes out of the revolving fund. Well, we do have a lot of people who have come forward and committed to us for long-term commitments. That's what we need, so we know we can plan going forward. And then last but not least, we need volunteers. And I can tell you right now, we'll have no problem getting those in Owen Sound, because we know in our other builds, people have come from Owen Sound to help us out. So land is our greatest need. And we would appreciate if you hear of any, and we know that many of you do already, but if you hear of any, let us know. We can supply a receipt for donated land or a partial receipt for partial donation, and we need your help to find land, because if we can get land, we can build, and that's the big thing. So the good news is, I'm not here today to ask you for anything. Isn't that odd? It's odd for me, I'll tell you, I don't feel right about it. But I will tell you, we will be back. Once we've got some land in Owen Sound, we will be back to ask you to participate financially by waiving fees, permit fees. Now, I notice you put a clause into your development charges that'll help us out dramatically, and I really appreciate that. But we will be back to ask for that. Our hope is to address the problem of affordable housing, one house, one family at a time. But I also will mention, I've been sizing you all up, and we do have a pair of shoes and a hard hat to fit every one of you. And we look forward to seeing you on the build site.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments? Councilor Lemon?
The one thing you didn't mention, I believe when someone gets a house from Habitat Humanity, they can't just roll a house and sell it immediately. There is a provision, the 5 or 10 years.
Thank you, Peter. That's a very good point. What the deal is in the first 5 years, if they sell the house, they get none of the capital gain. If they sell it in year 5, they only get 10% of the capital gain. Year 6, 20%, and it's graduated scale upwards. The reason I don't mention is not too many people sell their houses.
No, I'm sure they don't, but
Yeah.
I got asked years ago the question about what's to stop somebody from getting a house, rolling it over and buying another house
Yeah.
or something else, and I phoned and got the answer, which is
Yeah.
exactly what you said. The other comment I'd make is when we did our survey for municipal nonprofit housing, we found people paying 70% of their income for rent. And the thing is, if you're paying 70% of your income, you haven't got the money for adequate food, adequate clothing, or any amenities within the home. So I commend you for what you have done. During the election campaign, I visited the site on 3rd Avenue West, the old luxury ice cream site.
Mm-hmm.
You got a really happy bunch of homeowners in there.
Wouldn't you be happy if you were only paying 25% of your income on property, on home?
Deliriously, actually.
Yeah.
But,
You and me both, Peter.
but the thing was, it was just, the attitude was just super. The cleanliness of the units was excellent. The only problem I had was getting out of there to knock on other doors, because they wanted to tell me what they thought of Habitat for Humanity, and it was all very positive.
Great.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Misters Fryer and McLaughlin, thank you very much for your presentation. Keep up the good work. We met a couple of weeks ago, and I got a little more detail on some of those statistics, and it's pretty amazing what you're doing. So we thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you for your time.
We'll see you again. Thanks. 9B in our agenda is Ali Boltman, Executive Director of the Community Foundation Grey Bruce and Owen Sound Community Fund. Welcome, Ms. Boltman.
Thank you.
I'll get you to push the button and that microphone so the light comes on. There we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me a chance to speak to you tonight. I am Ali Boltman. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Foundation Grey Bruce. I'm here tonight with members of the Owen Sound Community Fund, who I'd like to take a second to introduce. Marion Kepke, one of our new councillors tonight, is the city-appointed lead or representative for our committee. I have to see who else is in the room. I'm Anne Finley Stewart, who is over at the press table as one of our members. Karen Van Zyverden and Dave Edwards are very new members of the Community Fund in the corner. Do you two want to raise your hands? Sandy Stevenson has been with our fund for quite some time, and I don't think I'm missing anybody else. We've got a few other members, Ruth Henderson and Jan Chamberlain as well. We want to congratulate the new councillors and welcome back returning councillors. Because there are a number of new faces now on your team, we thought it might be helpful to come back to council to talk about the foundation to help better educate and inform City Council of our role in the community and to help in turn educate the public as well. Community Foundation Grey Bruce has been serving our community now for 20 years. Last year was our 20-year anniversary. We've been cultivating relationships with both donors and the organizations they support. We match philanthropy with need through our granting programs and the work we do strengthening the nonprofit sector. We continue to strive to be a leader in the community to bring about positive change where it's most needed. We have three main purposes. This is the Coles Notes version of what we do as a foundation. We accept donations to build endowments, and through those endowments, long-term sustainability through philanthropy. And I'm going to tell you what an endowment is. A lot of people are unclear of its meaning. It basically means forever, in perpetuity. So every single dollar that comes into us at our foundation, every dollar, whether it's from a large bequest or whether it's someone giving us a $10 donation, it's invested forever. That capital donation is never touched again. It's invested in perpetuity, and all of the donations that we receive get pooled together and invested to have maximum impact and to benefit the nonprofit sector in this community through the revenue that's generated from all of those funds working together. Right now, our endowment base is about $14 to $14.5 million. Last year, we granted out about $600,000 in the community, and this year it will be somewhere between $600,000 and $650,000 in our grants that we give out to the community. So it is that perpetuity piece through our endowments that's really important. And of course, the granting. It's a very unusual formula for a charity to also be a grant maker, and it's really what makes us quite special and unique. So our focus is endowment, our focus is grants for the nonprofit sector, and our third focus is one that may not be quite as well known in the community, but is extremely meaningful to us, which is our role as a community leader, our role as an organization that encourages community engagement, that addresses pressing problems in the community, that speaks to the community to find out what those problems are and how we can best address them. We do this through our workshops with the nonprofit sector to help them strengthen, to help them grow their capacity. We do it through our partnerships with local groups, such as last year, I think it's just been in the last year, that the Marine and Rail Museum was a project that the city decided, for example, that it was no longer able to support. We worked directly with the Community Waterfront Heritage Center to help strengthen that new group and give them the resources they need by starting an endowed fund for them and starting a flow-through fund for them that allowed them to get the donations that were coming in the door to an organization that hadn't yet built its charitable status. By working with one of our endowed funds and existing charities under our auspices, we were able to flow that money to them so that our community could retain that cultural resource. And a lot of people really felt that that had some real meaning in this community, and we were happy to do it. In 2014, we would have come to this council to talk about our Smart and Caring Education Initiative, which is our goal of adding close to $1 million to our education fund. But it's a lot more than just adding money to the fund, because every time we add to that fund, we are creating more dollars to create more scholarships and bursaries for student awards only in Grey Bruce, and we're supporting all 4 pathways of post-secondary education. That would be college, university, apprenticeships, and workplace training program. I'm not here tonight to speak about that, but I would be thrilled to if you'd like me to come back. But just to give you a very short idea, right now about 98% of all available funding to students in Grey Bruce is being streamed to the university kids, which is great, except that we only have about 10 to 12% of our kids who are ending up with university degrees. So we have a lot of work to do to balance those scales, and we're working hard to do that. We're also creating a website at the same time that's only for local youth, with local opportunities for student awards to help those students be able to reach those post-secondary goals. Right now, we have about 95 funds under the auspices of the foundation. They benefit education, environment, children, arts, culture, poverty reduction, and recreation. Funds are started by organizations wishing to contribute to their own sustainability, or by individuals or companies that want to help a specific cause or just help their community. We work with donors to develop their philanthropic goals. Our largest donor fund is the Eva Leffler Donor Advised Fund. And very often, when I go to meetings like this, and people always say to me, "What's with the basket?" This was Eva's basket. Eva was a huge local philanthropist, and I think this basket, which carries everything I need so nicely and is such a nice little piece of our rural community and a little reminder of Eva, is a nice thing to carry with me when I go around. Eva left us a $6.5 million bequest. She is the largest supporter we've had, and her fund last year paid out about $370,000 alone of that almost $600,000 that we gave out. We also, in those 95 funds, have 4 community funds, which is primarily what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. We have a community fund in Meaford, in Saugeen Shores, in Grey Highlands, and we're very lucky to have one here in Owen Sound. The one here was started from a $13,000 donation, which was the surplus from the 150th anniversary events that happened here in Owen Sound, the legacy events. And that's why there is a city rep that helps speak for the Owen Sound Community Fund, because the city contributed to the starting of that fund. Community funds allow us to ensure that every year there is at least a portion of funding that is completely directed to what's going on in your community. So last year we received about 200 applications throughout the year. We funded about 130 of them. There were 70 applications that we had to reject because there wasn't enough money to either go around, or there wasn't enough money to go around out of the existing funds that we have for the specific applications that came in. So while it's fantastic that Owen Sound has a community fund, it doesn't have nearly enough in it to be able to do all the things that Owen Sound nonprofits want to do. Owen Sound is serving the largest number of people in all of Grey Bruce, and it's also when a lot of the applications come in from outside of Owen Sound, from larger organizations. They may be writing their application in from another community, but they're still doing an awful lot of their work for the people of Owen Sound and providing services to the people here. So we need to find a way to grow that fund. Now, I'm not here tonight to ask you for money for that fund. I'm here tonight as an awareness initiative to help you understand that the fund exists. At the end, when I leave, I'm going to leave you with this little sheet that's going to outline all of the applications that have come into us in the last year. But to give you the very short form version, there were $70,518 was granted out in Owen Sound this year to projects just directly to Owen Sound, and that's not counting the ones that were rejected. There was another $86,047 granted out to organizations that serve many people across Grey Bruce, but largely in Owen Sound. The Owen Sound Community Fund at the end of 2013 had about $21,000 in it. It granted out about $1,100 last year. It basically funded one project. This year, we're hoping it'll fund out about $2,000 because there's been some matching funding and some donations that came in. But when I did these calculations, out of that $86,000, if we were conservative, and I broke that into thirds and said that we just wanted to allocate 1/3 of that $86,000 to Owen Sound expenses, and then you added that $70,000 that we gave out in grants, it essentially means that the money we have in the Owen Sound Fund is paying for about 1.5% of the need in Owen Sound. So there's some work to be done, but we have really, really great people on our team to do that work. and we have great people in our city to help meet this need. But we need everyone's help here to have a better understanding of what we do, of what we're trying to do, whether that's because you've got some power in your planning of your own estates, whether that's because you're with an organization that might be interested in having a fundraiser and donating the proceeds to that community fund, whether there may be an opportunity at some point in the future for the city to allocate money to the fund. There are so many options, but if we don't come here and tell you what we do and tell you how important it is, then you're not going to know. So we're here tonight asking, as the Owen Sound Community Fund, to think about us the next time you may see an opportunity that arises that you may be able to help bring us to someone's attention or allocate funds our way to help grow this fund, because we want to be your partners. We understand that every single year people are coming to the city with all of these projects that they want the city to fund, but you're dealing with provincial cuts, you're dealing with a very pressed tax base, you have lots of challenges. We want to help meet those challenges, and the more people believe in us and the more people invest in this fund and help us grow it, we can do that, so that those applications stop coming to you and they come directly to us, where we have an arm's length process, where we have experts in community wellness to help make all of this come to life for the community, and it's not always sitting on your shoulders. I think I've said just about everything I wanted to say. I wanted to acknowledge that we have some really significant champions that have helped form the foundation, and many of them have come from City of Owen Sound's offices. Lyle Love, a former city manager, has recently started an apprenticeship fund with us, him and his wife. And he was a huge founder in the Community Foundation. Ovid Jackson, former mayor and then MP, was a driving force behind the creation of the Community Fund. Glenn Henry, a deputy and acting city manager. Arlene Wright's been very involved with our organization. Jan Chamberlain, there are so many. And I think that speaks really well to the fact that some very educated people who have their fingers on the pulse of Owen Sound and what the city needs have come from this community to our community to say that they understand we have value and the importance in what we're doing. And our foundation wouldn't be where it is today without those voices and the efforts of those champions. So thank you for hearing me out today. I'll leave you with some packages. My predecessor, Roberta Brignall, one of the most valuable things she taught me is never give them anything to look at before you speak, because then they won't look up and no one will listen to you. So I'm going to leave you with these packages on that note. Does
Great.
anyone have any questions?
Thank you. I think Councillor Kepke does.
Thank you. Just a comment, Ali. Great presentation. I hope that people hear your words that there is an Owen Sound Community Fund, and hope the media picks up that it's available for people to donate to, as well as people to ask for donations from.
Yes.
I know I've been involved with the Community Foundation for over 15 years on the board, and started out on the grants committee on the board and worked up to chair, and then never left the grants committee.
That's
and
right.
Still am on the grants committee, but I'm really thrilled to be involved in this Owen Sound Community Fund. And you're right, it's a very enthusiastic group. They've got some great fundraising ideas. So I just hope that things will work out and that people will certainly take heed about the Owen Sound Community Fund.
I should have mentioned you when I was talking about the legacy of people who from this community of people that have supported us. Marion's been there for a long time, and I also should have said that we have a matching program in effect now too for anyone who's interested, and I have some information about that too.
Great, thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Just one comment. I was involved with helping to save the old Marine Rail Museum, and we owe a great debt to the organization for the help you gave us when we were doing the initial fundraising, etc. That was fantastic and greatly appreciated, and it's an example of the worth of the functions that you perform to our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon.
Again, thank you for your presentation, and thanks for the work that your group does in our community. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
So our next matter is 9C, deputation from Scott Lovell, Executive Director, and I believe Rob Cordell, or maybe just Scott. I see Rob's here, Board Chair of the Grey Bruce Hospice, with regard to the new residential hospice project. And I think, Scott, you brought some help as well.
Yeah, I think by the end of the night, everybody in the room will be introduced, so.
Tell me something. How old were you the first time you were in this room?
I think the youngest elected office building that I've been in was Queen's Park. I went there, I think, first as a young child. I don't think that I came here before I was in my teens,
Oh, okay.
but I'm delighted to be here
So
tonight.
starting the boys early.
Yeah, of course. They're, we like to pretend this is their first meeting, but they come all the time.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Never a problem. I just want to say, first of all, I'm delighted to share the stage tonight with two organizations that do not just a great job for our community, but to the residential hospice as well. We have the benefit of a couple of members of our board, past and current, who have been associated with Habitat for Humanity, and we've recently benefited from an endowment with the Community Foundation. So pleased to be here tonight to share some time with them. Good evening, Your Worship, and through you to all members of council. Before I begin my remarks, I want to acknowledge those in attendance tonight who have long supported the residential hospice and continue to play a leadership role in our operation. I'm joined tonight by our hospice board chair, Rob Cordell, as well as members and physicians locally, Dr. Hilly Huff and Dr. Bruce Stanners, as well as our treasurer, Maureen Kemp. I'm also joined tonight by my wife, Deborah, and my two sons, Cameron and Griffin, who don't often get a chance to see Daddy speak like this. I'll also introduce Reverend Harry Huff, who is Dr. Huff's husband, who I think that completes the introductions in the room.
Thanks.
On behalf of our volunteer board, our team of registered nurses, personal support workers, volunteers, and especially so the patients and the families we serve, I wish to express our appreciation for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm going to use my time to address the partnerships that are critical to the success of residential hospices across the province and how hospices make communities stronger and more vibrant. I as well hope to impress upon you the role you can play as municipal leaders in ensuring that we are able to construct the best possible facility to serve the region of Graham Bruce for years to come. As the only residential hospice in Ontario temporarily co-located within another facility, and one of only 3 in southwestern Ontario, it is our obligation to the population of Graham Bruce to build a freestanding residential hospice. At our current location, we are providing expert end-of-life service with exceptional dignity and compassion, but this location was always temporary. To reach our potential, to fulfill our commitment to become a center of excellence in palliative care, we need to design and construct a purpose-built space that takes into account our role in the health system. We are an essential service to the city, to the region, and we need our own space. Now we know where we want to build our new hospice. We want to make 1725 10th Street East in Owen Sound our home. It's an ideal location for us. It's close to the hospice and close to ancillary services. It has natural features that will contribute to a home-like feel, and it's accessible to the public. We have made a conditional offer on this land that requires, as a part of finalizing the sale, some decisions by the city, which will be considered tonight, and others that will be required in the near future, and they will help put our project in the best possible position to succeed. How council reflects the community voice on this project can have a tremendous benefit in moving us forward. And we need to move forward. Residential hospice care plays a significant role in our community, helping patients access the right bed at the right time for the right reason. Our hospice helps reduce ER visits and hospital admissions by palliative patients and helps relieve bed pressures in the hospital by providing an option for loved ones who may end up in an acute care setting if there is no other alternative. But more importantly is the care loved ones receive at the hospice. We help patients die in comfort and with dignity, all the while providing support for the family who will carry on their legacy. In almost 2 years of operation, we've learned a lot about what it means to serve Graham Bruce in this capacity. We know that Grey Bruce has close to the highest number of seniors in Canada living within our region, and that almost 70% of all the patients we care for have been over the age of 65. Of our 151 patients, almost half have come from within the city of Owen Sound. The need for this essential service in our community will only continue to grow. This is our role in Graham Bruce, and we need to ensure we are able to provide our unique care in an appropriate setting. And to do so, we need the community's help. In Ontario, residential hospices are funded by the provincial government for only a portion of their operation. The funding we receive can only be applied towards the salaries of our registered nurses, personal support workers, and manager of resident care. All other aspects of our operation, including such things as patient meals, medical supplies, rent at our temporary location, and other comforts, are supported entirely by community donation. and no capital funding is being provided by the province for our or any other residential hospice project. Our hospice is going to be built solely through donation from our community. Therefore, every expense we incur as a part of this project is a cost we must seek to recover through a capital campaign. We need to eliminate as many expenses as possible, and if we can't eliminate them, we need to reduce them. And if we can't reduce them, we need to try and find an in-kind donation solution. The property we hope to purchase reflects this very approach. Our conditional offer was made at fair market value for the property, but we are fortunate to have, at the very first stage of our project, already benefited from the spirit of generosity that we hope will define our campaign. The owner of this land, recognizing that the out-of-pocket expenses to the hospice simply become additional dollars to be raised in his community, agreed to a donation arrangement that only requires the hospice to pay cash on half the value of the property. On the strength of his kindness, the offer was made possible. Now we appeal to the city to become our partners as the deadline on our offer approaches. Specifically, I'm here tonight to bring to your attention two matters currently before council that require a decision before we can move forward. The first is a rezoning application. The current designation of the property of R3H would not permit the construction of a residential hospice on this property. We believe that siting a residential hospice in this location makes sense. Of the total admissions to the hospice, many come to us from the Owen Sound Hospital. Our proximity to the hospital will reduce the cost of transportation to our facility and mean ease of access by palliative care physicians and other providers. But it also sends a message about partnership. Grey Bruce Health Services and the Residential Hospice of Grey Bruce are partners in care. By allowing the use of this land for residential hospice, Owen Sound will be home to yet another important piece of health infrastructure in the delivery of regional care, standing almost physically shoulder to shoulder with Grey Bruce Health Services. The second decision required by the city is on the cost of servicing fees for this land. The property is triangular in shape, with its longest features being the frontage, and we know how this affects fees. A condition of the current owner is to see these fees reduced by considering the area of the property rather than the frontage. Through city staff, who have been attentive and responsive, this seems to be a fair request. This is a condition of the seller, however. It would be our preference, and it remains an option to see the servicing fees waived in their entirety. The residential hospice recognizes that in these early stages, we need the city of Owen Sound to be an active and engaged partner in this project. Through a partnership, together the hospice and the city can work on aspects of the project to mutual benefit. We want to work with the city to create the best possible conditions for success on this project. Your worship, through you and to your council, I respectfully request that the city of Owen Sound support the new hospice project as follows. First, because our conditional offer has timelines that need to be met, we ask that every possible step be taken to expedite a decision on each the rezoning application and agreement on the frontage fees. It's my hope that in the interest of surety for our board and the community, these decisions can be made by March 31st. Second, we ask council to designate the appropriate committee to work with the residential hospice of Grey Bruce and report to councils on ways to eliminate or reduce the expenses the hospice will incur during the design, pre-construction, and construction phases of our project by waiving fees or charges outright. As an example, by definition, our project would be considered by the city to be institutional. We're not an institution. We're a registered charity and not-for-profit organization. Council has within it the powers and the ability to align our project with another designation, allowing us to benefit from the freeze on development charges. But to be clear, we're also asking the city to waive building permit fees, site planning fees, and other costs of the project that originate from the city. Every expense to our project, remember, is an expense to the community. But our partnership obliges us to recognize that the city has its own duties to the ratepayer. What we're asking for tonight does not require cash out of pocket for the city, rather seeks that the usual costs recovered not be applied to this unique project. These types of requests for municipal support are not without precedent. Across the province, we have seen municipal leadership rally behind residential hospice capital projects in a number of ways. Chatham pledged $1.5 million to their hospice over 5 years. Leamington donated $2 million to theirs. The city of Cornwall donated $500,000 to their hospice. Sudbury donated $200,000 to theirs. And there's one astounding contribution from the city of Stratford of $1.5 million for a project yet to be approved. But there's a reason these municipalities rally behind their hospices. Hospices help build stronger communities. A city with a residential hospice is able to offer their medical constituency an additional resource in providing care for their patients. It is able to support their population with an essential health service and another option at end of life. Our community is no different. There are great reasons for the city of Owen Sound to rally behind this project. The residential hospice has direct economic development opportunities, as well as indirect advantages. This project will support more health human resource opportunities, more jobs in our community. Currently, the residential hospice has 22 employees and over 150 volunteers helping provide our care. In a new facility, each of these numbers will increase. This project will create construction job opportunities. We're ready to issue an RFP to local contractors when the time is right, and we're giving primacy to those companies that will, as best as possible, use local trades to construct our facility. This is a core tenet of our operation. Local dollars stay local. This project will provide better care in our community. Our region's population is aging. There is an emerging interest provincially and federally in improving access to palliative services. Our new hospice will help improve care options available to residents of Owen Sound and all of Grey Bruce. This project will help Owen Sound play a strong leadership role in regional health care. We will become a center of excellence in palliative care. We will build the capacity to export our expertise across Grey and Bruce and invite those who want or need to learn more about end-of-life care to work with us in our facility. Your worship, in partnership with the city and our surrounding municipalities, we can get this project moving. By arriving at a decision on rezoning and servicing fees and designating the appropriate committee to review charges and fees that could be waived, we will be able to take the next step in our short but proud history. We're grateful for the opportunity to address you tonight, and if appropriate, I can make myself available to answer any questions.
So, Mr. Lovell, we've got a report tonight on the application for rezoning that will move ahead in just a minute and deal with some of the substantial things. But first of all, any questions for Mr. Lovell? Councillor McManaman.
Thank you. Mr. Lovell, you talked about March 31st, you wanted to expedite this. So what's your timing on construction if these things were to move forward? Do you know that yet?
We've always approached this almost a little bit one step at a time. That the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we can acquire this property. The conditions expire around that date, which is the urgency for us at that point. And then following that, I understand that there are a number of other procedures that would be followed by the city. If everybody worked as best as they possibly could to push things forward, we would like to see construction start at some point in the summer. But it requires a lot of people all sort of rowing together with the same oar to get us there. So.
Okay, any of the Councillor Lemon?
Yes, one other question pertaining to this and to your request. When we bring forth the report, I'm going to make a motion on the development charges separately. And there's another issue in there that I think that we can help save some money on as well, in addition to the ones you've requested.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions for now? Mr. Lovell, I'll get you to have a seat, and we're going to be approximately 15 seconds probably before we get to that.
I'll wait patiently.
Going to 9D in the agenda, Mr. Hall contacted us and was not able to come tonight, so we'll set that aside and come back to that on a different night. Next on the list is number 10, which is public question period. If there's anyone with a question for council. Good, thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Your worship, I'll bring forward a motion to bring forward item 12A2 regarding the hospice.
Okay, thank you. And we're all in favor of that, council? Yeah, that wasn't really a motion, I don't think. It was just just making sure nobody's going to argue. Ms. Coulter, do you want to present that report, please?
Thank you, Worship. Report 12A2 deals with an application by Ann Pet Realty through Peter Van Doler for a rezoning of lands at 1725 10th Street East from an R3 holding zone to permit a residential hospice. Today, those lands permit singles, semis, and duplex-type dwellings. In terms of what we've done so far, we've done a pre-circulation. That happened in January. A letter went back to the applicant in February. A formal application was received February 10th, and then we did a notice of complete application and public meeting as required by the Planning Act. The proposal is for a residential hospice, and specifically the rezoning would allow a long-term care facility as a permitted use on this property, amend the definition of a long-term care facility to include specifically a residential hospice on these lands, establish site and building regulations to permit that use on the lands, as well as establish site-specific parking criteria. We'll talk a little bit about the holding provision. The property is located on the south side of 10th Street East. It is triangular in shape with 143 meters of frontage and about 1.3 acres of lot area. The technical report that you have before you really reviews the proposed zoning bylaw amendment in the context of the provincial policy statement, the city's official plan, as well as the zoning bylaw. The holding provision that's on the subject property relates to ensure capital cost recovery for the city with respect to servicing the city front-ended in this area of Owen Sound. The costs are 823 meters per meter of frontage. To avoid two applications for rezoning, we're recommending that we deal with the holding provision now in terms of the payment of that fee, and one way would be to have an agreement that's registered on title that would allow the H to be removed and the payment of those fees at a later date at the time of site plan approval. Obviously that, with Mr. Lovell's request tonight, may not be required. In terms of next steps, based on the direction provided by Council tonight, we'll host a public meeting on March 10th. There would be a report following that meeting with a recommendation to Council on March 30th, and then there is a 20-day appeal period. So Council would be asked to make a decision on or about March 30th, but there is a 20-day appeal period. So, sorry, it's March 16th and then March 10th. My apologies.
Sorry, now you've got me more confused.
Public meeting on the rezoning would be March 16th.
16th, okay.
Following that meeting, there would be a report back on the next meeting, March 30th, with a recommendation to Council.
And then a 20-day appeal period from that.
That's right.
And is there, no, there probably isn't options to have the bylaw on the same night as the public meeting on the 16th. I'm just thinking about the deadlines.
It's always Council's option. It isn't normally our practice.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Leary, Councillor McManaman, I think had his finger up there first.
If I might, just a quick question. The discussion around frontage fees, you said we had front-ended services. Could you go into more detail about that? Or
The city entered into a partnership with other developers in the area. The city put a holding provision on this property specifically with respect to the costs that the city incurred for servicing road, sidewalk, curb, gutter, and linear infrastructure, road, sewer, and water main.
And Mr. Lovell mentioned something about frontage versus area. What's the, I hadn't heard of that before.
You'll see on the screen the subject property is outlined in red. I think his point is that there's 143 meters of frontage. The triangular shape of this property makes it such that it really doesn't benefit from that much frontage. Normally the property would be significantly larger with that amount of frontage.
So further to the point, is there some provision allowance for area versus frontage? Usually it's a frontage fee.
In this case, engineering has told us that the capital reimbursement to the city is based on frontage. So I don't know if Mr. Becking wants to comment further on that.
Well, I guess my question, Mr. Lovell mentioned area versus frontage. You mean there's been no discussion about that at staff level?
Certainly, I've had no discussion with anyone, although in the back and forth between planning and public works and engineering, we agree that the frontage is not a reasonable, given the configuration of the property, frontage is not a reasonable way to look at it. And perhaps especially given the philanthropic nature of the proposal, council may wish to come up with another formula, perhaps on the basis of an equivalent frontage, given the area of the nature of the property. So in other words, consider it a rectangular shape of a comparable area, and what would that configuration look like, and what would be the resulting frontage?
Okay, thank you.
Council, if I can have your permission just to jump in to ask a question that may affect some of your questions. Ms. Coulter, you said someone else front-ended the development of this area, and what is our obligation to the person that front-ended that for some of the services, just so we're clear?
In this case, the front ending was done by the city. I asked Mr. Webb that very question today. We don't have any obligation with respect to these
Good,
costs.
thank you. Councillor O'Leary, I think your hand was next.
Okay, just so I'm clear, I got a figure from staff that the frontage costs, those are frontage costs of, what, 118,000, is that what it was? Okay.
Councillor O'Leary, or sorry, Councillor Lemon, going the other way.
Okay, well, first of all, when you look at, in terms of the rezoning request, there is a huge amount of merit in that. I don't think this is an area where you're going to see a lot of single-family homes, et cetera, because you have the hospital behind you, you have Seasons in front of you, and you have Walmart to the one side. So really, this is a difficult piece of land. Its shape, part of it, like right in the corners there, you can't even park a car in the corner, north or east and west corners of it. So I think we have to take that into account. There's also another part of this request which I find that I would like to see removed, and that is the part of the request that says the scoped transportation study for this development. Well, I don't think that's necessary at all, because people are going to be coming and going from this institution 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not like a industrial plant where everybody's going to leave at once, or like a school where everybody leaves at once. This is a case where it's going to be incidentals, arrivals, and departures. So I think that, and I would, I don't know, I need a motion for it, that the request for a transportation study is spurious to the needs of this organization and the city, and that be removed from the requirements under the site plan agreement.
Just hold on for that. Councillor Kepke?
Just a quick comment. When there's a corner lot, is it correct still that the assessment is based on the narrowest portion of the corner? I know at one time that's how it worked.
I believe that's no longer the case, but I would have to check for you.
Maybe we can just go back and look at the recommendation there and have a look at that and see what we want to do with it first. Oh, Councillor Larry, you got your hand up there. Go ahead.
Okay, Scott, thanks very much for the presentation, and thanks to your group for making this happen. I think it's pretty exciting. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion here, but I wanted to make it clear that we're not setting a precedent here. I think this is an opportunity for the city to step up and do something for a hospice that it will very well touch every single one of us someday down the road. And so I would move that we waive all fees with the exception of the frontage costs, which I believe are $118,000, which would be reduced by 50%.
And with regard to the recommendation, Councillor O'Leary?
Okay, and I'll move the recommendation to that. That's number 2, correct?
I think it's more number 1.
Or number 1, to prepare for a public meeting on March 16th.
Okay. Further discussion, I'm going to go to Councillor Lemon first.
Friendly amendment that we remove the requirement for a scope transportation study. I don't think that's necessary.
we'll maybe get a comment from staff on that part in particular before you accept. I don't know.
I think I can work with staff to deal with whatever traffic issues may be
Okay, so
related to the proposal.
Councillor Larry, you accept that
I
amendment?
can accept that, yes.
And one point of clarification. Under what we're looking at passing in terms of DC's development charges, would this project, as it's now constituted, be exempt, or would it be subject to development charges?
I'm going to go back to Councillor O'Leary.
It's exempt because it's a not-for-profit, so it wouldn't be there anyways.
I just want to check with staff to make sure that
Going to go to Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Worship. The draft development charges bylaw that's listed on the agenda. Actually, Mr. Lovell asked me a similar question. I think it's hard to argue that the hospice doesn't fall within the definition of an institutional use. Having said that, Section 8.16 gives council the opportunity to address nonprofit housing as being exempt from development charges that are approved by this council. So you could use that clause of the development charges bylaw if it's approved.
well, in that case, I would make a second friendly amendment that we use that clause to ensure that the hospice is exempt from any DC's development charges.
I can accept that.
I think Councillor McManaman had his hand up next.
Thank you, Worship. I'd ask that the motion be split as far as the moving to a public meeting for the rezoning and then the waiving of fees. I have comments about the waiving of fees.
Councillor Larry, you okay with that?
And then I would move to, look to the clerk, how do I move an amendment that they be split. The item 1, the public meeting rezoning, be a separate item.
So the motion
waiving
is
fees.
to split number 1 from the rest of the discussion. It's a motion made by Councillor McManaman, so we're voting to split and have the discussion in 2 parts instead of doing it as 1 part. Councillor Gregg?
I just have a question to make sure that we're referring to a draft bylaw, and we're pulling an item out of something that's only in draft form. Is that still proper, or is the old bylaw still in effect?
Can we just focus on Councillor McManaman's motion first? You kind of jump back, and we need to deal with it first because of the nature of the motion, but hold on to that just for a second, if you would. Other comments to Councillor McManaman's motion to split these and have 2 discussions, basically, or 2 votes. All in favor? Now it's defeated. Oh, I guess we got to call opposed. There we go. Now it's defeated. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I have several comments about the fees. The first would be we're waiving fees. What's the amount we're waiving? Can anybody tell me that?
Does staff know that?
Through you, Your Worship, outlined in the pre-circulation comments were the following estimate of fees. Site plan approval for planning estimated at $3,000, engineering approximately $4,500. The frontage fee discussion, $117,689. Development charges, based on a 10,000 square foot building at $1.85 would be $18,500. The building permit, assuming $1 million of construction value and 10,000 square feet, approximately $30,000.
Do you have that total? Sorry. Well, just as she's doing that, the discussion around the development charges, I actually completely agree, as most people know my views on the development charges, but we do have a provision in there for not-for-profit housing, things of that nature. I believe that if this discussion had happened 2 weeks ago, we probably would have included residential hospice in that same list. I think that's a reasonable assumption, so I completely agree with that. As far as whether it's before or after this bylaw, either way, I think if the motion stands, it would waive the development charge, whatever it is at the time of the application. So, and I don't support the waiving of fees as it stands. I think we need a very thorough discussion. We just went through 4 meetings of our budget to discuss how short we are on many, many items. We just had another group, we had 2 other groups before us tonight, both excellent groups. Just as long as everyone's aware, so when those groups come forward, are we treating them the same as we're treating this group on waiving of all fees? Councillor O'Leary said we're not setting a precedent. I don't know how you're not setting a precedent. If we're going to start picking and choosing which community groups we're going to waive fees on and which ones we're not going to waive fees on, or which ones we're going to collect charges on and not collect charges on, I think that's a very, that's not a discussion I want to get into. So this is an excellent group. I couldn't agree more with your comments, and kudos to them for stepping up and developing this. Very needed service in our community. We don't even know, as of this moment, sorry, did we get the total cost?
Through your worship, I think I understand the motion is half of the frontage fees. So the total would be $114,845 approximately.
That we'd be waiving. Okay.
So that, and that's fine, that's up to council to decide. We set the bar pretty high, that's all.
I'm going to go to Councillor
Thank you.
Kepke next, and then, go ahead.
With respect to expediting the rezoning application, what risks or problems could result if you did do the public meeting and the bylaw at the same meeting?
Through your worship, our practice is not to have the bylaw the same night as the public meeting, to allow council to have, to thoughtfully consider any input that you would receive the night of the public meeting. If there were people in the audience and who didn't send their correspondence in advance, it may be difficult for staff to respond to that. Having said that, the public meeting, I want to mix up the date, on March 16th, allows the bylaw to be approved by March 30th, notwithstanding there is an appeal period. So we're very close to the timelines that they're looking for.
Going to go to Councillor Dodd next, and then Lemon.
So just for clarification here, this $117 or $117,689 is the $823 per meter of frontage, correct? Now, you just stated that we could potentially be changing that, be using that to the area opposed to the frontage. Is that, no? We said that'd be more practical sense for that?
The net effect, as I understand the motion, would be to achieve the same thing.
I'm just wondering if would it be a different price? Like if we're going based on the area, it would be a lower price, and if we're dividing it by 50%, would that not change a little bit?
No, all you're doing is reducing the frontage, but applying the same rate. But, you know, if you take a triangle and split it in two and then add it back together, you end up with a rectangle of a comparable frontage.
Okay.
Or a reduced frontage.
Perfect, thanks.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, in terms of passing the bylaw, statutorily, there's nothing to prohibit us from passing the bylaw the night of the public meeting. Although it's not been necessarily always practiced, we're still permitted legally to do that. Now, speaking to the fact that we're doing something for hospice, in a word, yes, we are. But we're doing something that is really, really vital for this community. The people who use hospice are at a very difficult part in their lives. For the families that are with them, it's extremely difficult. I know from personal experience of people passing away and not having a facility like this, which would have made the passing easier both on the person who passed, but also on those left behind. So let's have some compassion. Yeah, we're taking a certain risk by doing this, but we've done other risks and of things we've funded in the past where we felt strongly that it was a vital and important part of this community. So I will be asking for a recorded vote on this, and it has my full support because I think this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary to wrap it up, and then...
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I stand by what I said before. I am not setting a precedent. This is, without a doubt, a very rare opportunity to do something for the hospice that will touch every single one of us someday down the road. Thanks.
Councillor McManaman?
Very quickly, the passing of the bylaw question, would it not be possible to have the bylaw ready? And I'm not sure we're going, well, I guess we'll see if we get a lot of input and a lot of correspondence on this. Would it not be possible to have the bylaw ready, and if council wished to move it forward that night? I guess what I'm saying is if there were no negative comments, it's a lot easier to move something forward if there has been no negative comments at all. You could wait and see that night. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillors Lemon and McManaman, you will recall back in July that I wasn't at the final decision of busing, and that day I was with my mom up at the hospice, and it's pretty special service. Great staff there. It's important in our community. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Oh, we're going to recorded vote. Sorry, go ahead.
Councillor Dodd?
For the motion?
Favor.
Favor?
Councillor Gregg?
In favor?
Councillor Kepke?
In favor.
Councillor Lemon?
In favor.
Councillor McManaman? Councillor O'Leary?
In favor.
Councillor Thomas?
In favor.
Mayor Body?
In favor.
Resolution is carried with 7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Go ahead, Councillor O'Leary.
Scott, just now that we got that passed, I would ask you if there's some way you could recognize the city somewhere in the hospice at some point, if that's possible. Thank you.
Mr. Lovell, Mr. Cordell, congratulations, and everybody that presented to us tonight that have got great causes. We appreciate everything that gets done in our community. We wouldn't, this community wouldn't be anything without volunteers and people like all of you and groups like yours that keep moving us ahead, and it's appreciated by everybody in town, and I as mayor, get to speak on behalf of council, I guess, and all the citizens, and thank you to all of you that have made your presentations tonight. Thanks. Just Just wait for a second, and then we'll go on with number 11 there. At least they're talking. There we go. If we can move on with number 11, which is correspondence received, which direction of council is required. First up is 11A, or maybe 11A and B. A is correspondence from Lee Graves with regard to the expansion of the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move a motion with 11A and 11B that we receive these items of correspondence, and certainly expressing appreciation to the Tom for their change in thoughts and considering the courthouse for this.
I'll just maybe ask you to give a little more detail for anyone watching on TV that isn't looking at these correspondence in front of us, what they were, and that'll maybe help explain it.
Okay, the expansion of the art gallery is being proposed, and they're looking at expansion of the current facility, or as suggested in correspondence received by a resident, considering the old courthouse on 3rd Avenue East as a possible location for the art gallery and that complete footprint. So we're receiving correspondence that they are now going to consider the courthouse as a location.
Thanks for
Former
the
courthouse.
Thanks for the summary. All in favor of receiving those two pieces of correspondence? Good, carried. 11C is correspondence from the Scenic City Lions with regard to raising a flag for their convention May 1st to 3rd. Go ahead.
For those of us who are maybe not as familiar as we should be with the city's flag policy, I just wondered if someone could explain to me.
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city only allows, in the city's flag policy, the city only allows national flags to be flown at City Hall. So this would not fall into that category.
Okay, Councillor Kepke.
Just a question, has there been any consideration of another location in the city that these types of flags could be flown?
Not that I'm aware of.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you. There was a discussion at one point of putting a flagpole near the one at near the library, across from the library, near the cenotaph, having another flagpole somewhere in that vicinity. But anyway, it didn't move forward.
I almost called you councillor. I hate to demote you. Ms. Corsi, city manager.
Council, be very careful on this one. Because at some point, you'll be asked to do something you don't want to do.
So, motion with regard to Councillor Lemon with regard to the correspondence?
Yeah, I believe that there is another exemption that was not the Festival of Northern Lights flag exempted. And also, I believe Legion flags are exempted and allowed to fly on our flagpole, as well as national flags.
Could be. Can I have a motion with regard to the correspondence, please? Councillor Thomas.
I move to receive this.
Great, thank you. All in favor? It's carried. Thanks. 11D is correspondence from the City of Quesnel with regard to Communities for Veteran Foundations right across Canada. My recollection is, go ahead, Councillor Lemon.
Yes, that request from the City of Quesnel in British Columbia, I think it's absolutely thrilling that they're going to come to Owen Sound, and I think we should be encouraging them. I don't think we've got a bylaw that prohibits horses riding on our city streets, because we do have Mennonites who from time to time come into the city with horse-drawn buggies. So does the city staff see any issue with horses coming through the community?
Go ahead. All the jokes I could make.
Your Worship, if I could suggest to council that the matter be simply referred to staff, and it'll be dealt with in accordance with our regular corridor control policies, and we'll respond to the municipality accordingly.
Is that even necessary? Yeah.
I would also ask that a copy of this be referred to the Owen Sound Legion, because
Yes.
I think you're going to get some feedback from there, which I think may affect how we deal with this.
And so you're moving that, Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Anything further? All in favor? Great. Thank you. That was carried. 12A1, report with regard to Owen Sound wastewater treatment plant outfall is 12A1, report from purchasing agent Mr. Backing, or?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will recall I reported at your last meeting that we had just received the tenders for the reconstruction of the outfall for the wastewater treatment plant. And at the time, I indicated that the lowest bid had come in considerably above the budget for that project. The low bid was $315,000, and the budget allowance was $950,000, including a $50,000 contingency. Since your last meeting, staff have met with the low bidder, Graham Construction, who is also the company constructing the upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant. And through a series of scope changes, we've managed to negotiate a considerable reduction in the cost of the work to now get it down to $1,192,294, also including the $50,000 contingency. So the net effect of our negotiations was to get it down to a 1.142 million. On the basis of the negotiations that have gone on, staff are recommending the award of the contract to the successful low bidder, being Graham Construction. And for a variety of reasons relative to the administration of the work, we're recommending that you authorize me to issue an authorization for an extra to the contract. We'll add the scope of the outfall to the contract, as well as add the scope to the, or add the contingency to the existing contingency, and that will allow us to administer the contract through the existing administrative processes that are already in place, and that will result in some further savings that we'll be able to accrue as a result of the work.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon, questions, discussion?
I would move the recommendation.
Okay, any other discussion?
We need to do the work. I mean, we don't really have a lot of choice.
All in favor? That is carried. 12-2A we've already dealt with. 12, sorry, the other way around, 12A2. 12A3, Ms. Corsi presenting on core service review options.
Thank you, Worship. Can we get it on here? I, of course, am challenged, so look at that. Okay. I know it was a very long report, but I felt it was important on such an important item to really go through the various options for you. So to simplify it a little bit for discussion this evening, I took the opportunity to do a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. So what I'm going to talk to you about tonight are your options for a program or service review and what you might want to consider moving forward on. So the primary focus of any of these reviews is on what programs and services the municipality should deliver and at what level. Sounds fairly straightforward. No? So, how best do you deliver a program or a service? And we need to analyze that. We're going to talk a little bit later on about alternative service delivery, and that's the process of public sector restructuring to one degree or another to improve delivery of programs and services. So not only in this term of council, but also in the last term of council and throughout my career, municipalities have been looking at doing these types of reviews. And I talked to a number of municipalities quite recently on this whole issue, and there are a couple of fundamentals you need to be aware of. Numerous municipalities undertake reviews. Virtually no programs are ever eliminated. Most try to find efficiencies within the current services that you deliver. And there is a very high degree of sensitivity to eliminating or changing services. And I think the previous council saw what happens when you try to do that. Any service that we're talking about tonight will take between 3 and 18 months to complete. Do not ask staff to do something that they can't achieve without affecting the quality of the work to be completed. Internally, you're looking at somewhere between $3,000 to $10,000, depending on whether you need some particular expertise that we have to hire for the analysis. An external review done by an accounting firm often can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $400,000. And generally, real savings are achieved by straightforward initiatives utilizing existing resources. So this is one of those cases where spending a lot more money does not get you a lot better results. The Owen Sound experience in the near past has been somewhat mixed. Garbage collection, we outsourced. That, I think, was a success. We've had good results from that. Parking has been outsourced. That has, I think, been successful. Although on both of those, you do hear the comment that we've taken salaries away or wages away that could have been spent within Owen Sound. Our road and sidewalk maintenance, we tried to put a new level of service in. For a variety of reasons, we did not successfully keep that in place to date. And on transit, well, we did achieve some savings because we did go out to a new contract. The level of service is essentially the same. So when we review municipal programs and services, first we need to identify the core and non-core opportunities to lower service levels. So that's really speaking to what do you have to do and what are discretionary opportunities. You need to identify what an acceptable minimum level of service is as you go through this exercise. You know, our goals here would be generally to find long-term sustainable solutions to ongoing budget challenges. This isn't about one-offs. This is about how are we going to find sustainable long-term solutions. We need to continue to provide quality and affordable programs and services to our residents. And yet we need to maintain responsible taxation. So the first option that I wanted to examine was what we call the continuous improvement program. I would argue that staff do this on an ongoing basis. That's where we find efficiencies and improve effectiveness as part of just doing good business. You take a selected number of services, you don't necessarily go right across the board, and you look at those. It speaks to financial stewardship and project priorities. Under this program, you look at getting the right people at the task. You look at whether you can use technology. You hear Jamie Walpole speak to this often. Are there ways to find efficiencies using technology? And you heard this afternoon in our strategic plan exercise about SMART objectives. So on any of these, and this will go for any of the programs, we need to be specific. We need to make sure it's measurable. We need to make sure it's attainable. There's no point in saying, let's do this if we can't really do it. It needs to be relevant, and it needs to be trackable. And it's an ongoing process. Option 2, core service review. What programs and services at what level? This would include, I would suggest, the enhanced continuous improvement program. That's what we do as staff almost every day and certainly every budget. We examine, can we make improvements across the board or in specific areas. Has to be comprehensive. So you've got to look at the full picture because you'll get caught if you've only looked at half the picture. And it will include things like alternative service delivery. Is there a better way to do it? Is there a better way to get that service to the people? The principles of a core service review. What's its importance to the public? If the public don't need it or want it, why are we doing it? And it might surprise you all often. You look at that and go, well, maybe we actually don't need to do it. The importance operationally. We can say to Ken, cut 50% of your road plowing budget. Well, you can't plow half the road, or you can't plow half the roads. So you have to really ensure that you've identified that. You have to really, at the end of the day, we're talking about can we find real savings on our tax levy? And on rate-based services, sewer and water, we have to recognize, are there real savings there that we can achieve? And are they sustainable in the longer term? One municipality that's gone through this exercise, and they did it internally, and I have spoken to the people there, was Port Hope. And they did it in 2012 through 2013. What they set out was the description of the service attributes, the level of service, the service delivery, public perception of the service. and service changes being considered. They then categorize those, so was the service legislated? Was it required? What's the risk management or health and safety issues with that? And you see that when we go through the budget today. You see whether there is a health and safety or a safety issue regarding services. Is there a direct link to your strategic plan objectives and goals? What's the importance to the public? We will go out to the public with this if you choose to move forward. And they will tell you whether it's a priority to them. And it is a good standard practice. You know, there are 440 municipalities in Ontario, and generally speaking, we all have to deliver the same services. And somebody's got it more right than others. So we need to kind of look at that. They then asked for directors' comments on the service. So they looked at things like lower, meeting, exceeding, comparable benchmarks, best practices, and legislative standards. So they check-marked all of that. Was there an opportunity for service level adjustments? Was there an opportunity for internal, intra-departmental synergies? So can we do it better if we go across various departments? Was there an opportunity for service delivery alternatives? And were there revenue opportunities? Can we charge for a service because we do it exceptionally well, or there is a need for that service? This is an example of one of the sheets that they completed. The document that they took to council was approximately 370 pages. So it was a very lengthy exercise. There was a lot of detail. And at the end of the day, they came to council with about 20 of these and said, do you agree with this? And this next one was just an idea of sort of the detail that they had in there. So it was a very comprehensive exercise, took a lot of staff time, and in talking to their CAO, probably about half of the initiatives got implemented to one degree or another and stayed in place. Option 3, which is the external full program service review. These are usually undertaken by an external consultant, often with an accounting background. KPMG does a lot of them. It does ensure objectivity of the analysis. There's always a concern that each director will champion their particular area, as they should, because you know what? That's their professional opinion that that is a critical area. And, you know, it's up to me and for council to kind of sort through that a little bit. Those are very costly reviews, and even though you've got an external agency working on them, they take a lot of staff time as well. I couldn't resist picking on the City of Toronto, because they did the core service review. And I just looked at one area, and it just gives you an idea of the complexity of what the external people looked at. So they had a standing committee, and they looked at the service budget. They then did the rationale for core and service level assessment. They looked across the top. Was it below standard, at standard, above standard? Was it a core or a discretionary service? Was it mandatory, essential, traditional, or just because? And you'd be amazed at how many things happen just because they've always happened. They looked at jurisdictional examples, and they did the measurement against other municipalities. So you'll see here that Toronto has slightly more pools per capita than other Ontario cities. So you have those sorts of comparisons. They looked at key opportunities as well. And then they did that funny little bubble thing that I'm not even sure I totally figured out. They looked at all of the costs and comparisons, and this was a very, very comprehensive analysis. This was the $400,000 project. I know, and I think council, you know, we don't have $400,000 to do this exercise. So the recommendation here is that we do an internal core service review, but it must be rigorous and objective. There must be a proven record of success out of all of this. It has to tap into in-house expertise and knowledge. It has to support a future existing continuous improvement program. That is so important that we don't ever stop looking for savings and best practices. It's really critical that we recognize there will be a financial impact and that council has to have a willingness and a level of commitment to act on any of the findings. I don't want to go through this, and I don't want to ask my staff to go through it if there isn't a commitment on behalf of this council to implement. Do you want to? I've just got two more slides, I think.
Let's finish this.
That's good. It's also recommended the council endorse the alternative service delivery analysis as part of whichever option is chosen, so we build that into the exercise. So that's the recommendation. I'm also asking for your consideration on setting up an ad hoc committee to assist with this and to guide the process. And one suggestion is that that ad hoc committee consists of the mayor, a council rep, myself, and the senior management team. It could take whatever form, but I can tell you, I think as all of you have noted, it is a very challenging exercise to get all 9 of you together too often. That committee would be responsible to provide some strategic direction, resource approval if necessary, and issue management, but it would not deal with the decisions. I just want to make that very clear. That would not be a decision-making committee. That is simply a procedural committee, if you will. And it would be required to report back to council. I wanted to just speak to the challenges of this because you need to recognize these. It requires a high level of staff engagement and resources, and I can tell you right now we're doing a strategic plan. We're about to launch the second phase of the asset management plan, and all of our day-to-day responsibilities. This is a staff that is already stretched, and this will stretch them even further. It needs clear direction and commitment by council. So you have to be in this for the whole game. And it does require a strategic plan foundation. We need to know at that level of the strategic plan what it is you want to achieve and what directions you're going. Because otherwise, how do we measure these services and what the suggestions are? So that's the end of the show, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, back 2 slides from your last slide. There's something there that caused me a great deal of angst, where it looked like you were saying that if there comes a recommendation forward, council must approve it. That is there. Financial impact and council's willingness and level of commitment to act on any findings.
So that's the approved findings, if I could, just to qualify that. So we'll give you a range of options and considerations, but once you approve them, you've got to be committed to them. So you can't sort of stick up your hand and say, yep, I think A, B, C, F, and G. Staff, you go out there and make them happen. And then 6 months later, someone stands before you and says, I don't like that. Can you please change that? You need to be committed to that decision. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't get to choose which ones, but once you choose them, you need to be committed to them.
Yeah, but we ran into this a year ago over a decision to make alterations to transit. And we discovered that there was a porcupine on the end of the rope on that one, and we changed back, and that's good. But I just want to make sure that prior to passage of anything, that it has a full and strenuous review by council. And the other thing is, I don't think council's involved enough in this.
That's why I'm here this evening, council.
Councillor Kepke.
Just a few comments. Is there an opportunity in option 2 for all staff to be engaged in their ideas of how savings can be achieved? Not just management staff, but all staff.
This is about core service delivery. This is at a higher level than looking at from an internal process.
Can it be
how
combined, though?
Pardon me?
Can that be included in it?
We can do that without doing this.
Because I think that's an important factor that has worked before and hopefully would work again. So just consideration of that. My second comment is the ad hoc committee, I don't think one counselor on that is enough. I think at least two on there, or maybe three. And the third comment is, all of us were elected as a commitment to the betterment of this community. So I think you have that assurance that we are committed.
I appreciate that.
Or committable.
I didn't say that.
Councillor O'Leary.
A couple things. I would want to be fully engaged in this exercise. So the one counselor at an ad hoc committee, is there a way you could send out an email to each of the counselors? Because I can't speak for us all, but I would think everyone wants to be involved in this. Can you send an email out saying that there's going to be a meeting at such and such a date, and all of the counselors will have an opportunity to go and sit on that? Because I will be at every one. And that's one. And second thing, I hate to look at it as a stretch on staff. I would look at it as an expectation. I think this is really important. And the third thing is, what is the procedure with the County of Grey? Like, if we wanted to do something with say, a department and share it with, or move it to the county, will they be involved in any of these meetings? Or is that what our deputy mayor does? Or, like, if we wanted to move something to the county, how do we know what it is they can do for us if they're not involved in the meeting?
I think that's more, if I could, just to the county, the division of responsibility between the county and the local municipality. I think that is more your mayor and your deputy mayor at the county level. I'm going to suggest we only look at services that we clearly know we are responsible to deliver at the local level.
Well, one of the things we're going to look at is whether or not we should, like, if we're going to move a department to the county, then we're going to look at that,
I
correct?
think that's more of a political decision than it is a core service review. With respect, I just, I can't say to you, move a service to the county or not. I can tell you whether I think, because it is our responsibility to deliver legislatively today, how we might be able to find efficiencies in that service.
No, but I'm just, I would say to you that I don't want you to make that decision. But if we're making the decision to do something like that, I'd like to know what the county can do for us.
Sure, and I think you can do that, but I think that's through a different report, or perhaps through the mayor and deputy mayor who sit on county council. That's not, from my perspective, part of looking at the services that the city is responsible to deliver today. As part, I suppose, out of that study, you could say, you know what, we'd like to go to the county and ask them if they can deliver it. That's fair.
Be a result of,
But
a result of the study.
it just complicates it from my perspective to a point. I can't give you the information if suddenly I have an option on the table that maybe I can get the county to do it. I think you can, once you see the report, as Councillor Lemon has asked, that you can choose to do whatever with the recommendations in that report, and one of those recommendations from you could be, let's go talk to the county on the delivery of this service. But then you'll come at that from an informed perspective, because you'll know the cost, you'll know some of the options locally and how we compare, so I think you'd be well prepared to have those discussions.
Right, and I just think, like, for myself, I don't really want to sit and listen to a recommendation. I want to sit through the entire discussion, so I know, and
So I'm
that's just
okay
me.
with that, except, it's sometimes more complicated if we only get certain people certain meetings and other people other meetings. And if we're going to keep moving, you're right. If I have the ability to just say, here's when the meeting is,
Right.
whoever wants to come can come, but we're going to keep moving forward.
Ms. Corsi, if you can just maybe describe better or give us more information on what the ad hoc committee would do, because I think there's some confusion that the ad hoc committee would be making decisions about what gets reviewed or what
Right. So
what
the
the
ad hoc
outcome
committee
is.
would look, first of all, at the process. So we'd lay out a draft process of how we see this rolling out. It would provide strategic direction on timing, on the list of things you want examined. So we'll do templates and we'll get them vetted, if you will, through the committee. And resource approval. So for instance, if I get into something that really does need a particular expertise, because it's an area that we don't have the in-house expertise, we need to hire someone for a very specific item. And I've said we could do this for $3,000 to $10,000, so it's not going to be a huge number at any point. I'd want to have the ability to say to the committee, are you okay with me plucking this particular expertise? That would cost us $2,000. And issue management, if we come up, you guys may, in fact, whoever's on that committee somewhat, become the referees as 4 or 8 staff people who are, really looking at their own areas and their own expertise, saying, here are the challenges with that, to do a little bit of that. You know what? The ad hoc committee is going to be pretty ad hoc, because I'm not sure I can answer all the questions of what it would look at today. But its job at the end of the day will be to make sure the process keeps moving, to make sure it's comprehensive, and that at the end of the day it comes up with a report that can be presented to council with some options for consideration.
And Councillor Larry, like any committee or ad hoc committee, the reports have to come back to council for approval before we can take the next step anyway, so
it's really just an efficiency from my perspective to allow us to keep the process moving.
Okay, so we've got 3 options presented to us. The third option involves bringing in a consultant that I think Brockville was actually $70,000 to $80,000, being a little smaller community, but still $70,000 to $80,000, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And anybody got any comments on that option number 3, hiring a consultant from outside? Councillor Gregg,
I have an opinion on option 3, and I'm not in favor of it. I would make a motion to remove that as an option at this time.
Okay, so Councillor Gregg wants to move to eliminate that as an option. Any discussion? Anybody that wants to oppose him on that? All in favor? There we go. It was unanimous. It was carried. So now we're down to 1 and 2 as options.
I think the report actually lists option 2 as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Simply wanted to move that report's recommendation. I think it takes you back.
Okay, so Councillor Kepke?
I'm in favor of moving option 2, but I would like to see a portion of that to engage all staff in finding some types of cost savings just in their day-to-day work. So my motion would include that.
I'm happy to do that. I do want all of you to recognize this is not a 1-month exercise. This is probably a 12 to 18-month exercise. It certainly would be a significant advantage to the corporation if we can get you some answers prior to the next budget. But I can tell you, I have a staff that don't have a lot of resources today that they aren't going to have to take away from something else to get this done.
If I may, Ms. Corsi, you know what, I'm going to go ahead with Councillor Thomas. Go ahead.
I think what I have to say is better. No.
No, I want to see if it's the same
Well, I
thing,
just
actually.
wonder whether, given the comments that we've heard, the need for the strategic plan to be finished, which we know will be in June, and the fact that staff is stretched as it is now. I know poor Mr. Becking is probably going to have to take 6 weeks off after the pipes oh no, they are frozen, I'm sorry. After the pipes thaw in June. I just wonder if Councillor Kepke would consider it a friendly amendment that we start this whole process at the end of June, rather than starting it now when it's a little bit premature vis-a-vis the strategic plan. And I mean, perhaps you'd like to start a little sooner just to get the pieces in place on how you're going to do it. But I'm just wondering whether we can just.
I just don't want council to think I'm going to have some results for you next month.
Go ahead, Councillor Craig.
Yeah, I like that idea. I almost wonder too if there's a little bit of all of us wants more of an opportunity to for our input to come through here in the first year yet, being new and not so much wallpapered from the council of the past where this is being done for us. I think we just maybe want a little bit more time to be able to prove ourselves and provide our own input to come forward.
Can I make a suggestion that I bring in terms of reference back once the strategic plan has been approved by council? And that kind of kickstarts it, if you will.
So if I can comment, I really wanted this done by June, being our first year, being that as you sit here, you will be stunned at how quickly 4 years is going to fly by your eyes, and there always seems to be one other thing on the plate that you didn't anticipate, and that was my hope to have it done before we got too far down the road. The reality is I was in dreamland with regard to this because of the things that previous council approved, like our strategic planning, and the things that were pretty well forced into, like the asset management plan that we started, and with a change of staff we lost hold of, and that, to go a little bit sideways, we lost 2 employees basically that put the asset management plan sideways. You know, we don't have that backup person. We don't have the understudy sitting in the wings waiting to grab center stage in municipality, and it's great for controlling a budget. There's a double-edged sword to that. So realistically, I realized that there's, I was in dreamland hoping it'd be done by June. I'd love to have it done so that we would have something to be able to work forward on as this council in the next 3.5 years, but realistically, I don't think we can do it. With regard to Councillor Kepke's comment about being able to get comments from staff, I almost think we're talking about 2 different things, and that a core review is looking at the services that we provide down, not necessarily looking at how we provide it or whether we can have more efficiencies within that. That's almost 2 different conversations, and I get your point. What did it used to be called? Oscars was the thing that was around a few years ago, which is a little bit different, and that's ideas coming up, and we should always encourage that and maybe should formalize that. I think the core review is a little more difficult, where we're going to look at budgets, we're going to look at numbers, we're going to look at how we do things potentially, and have a good review of things that's going to be how we provide services, and it's going to be a little more comprehensive, I think, and a little more difficult, frankly, than just the ideas that will come out of staff. So, so you had a motion which was with regard
to approve option 2, and I'm in favor of certainly waiting until June when the timing's better, and I'm also in favor of removing the portion about the cost-saving initiative by staff. Perhaps that may be an action item out of the core service review.
Okay, further discussion. See, Councillor Lemon isn't here, but further discussion. All in favor? Carried. Great. Thank you. Thank you. We're down to 12A4, which is a report from, I think, Ms. Coulter, with regard to application for Brownsfield Financial Incentive.
Thank you, Worship. This is an application under our Community Improvement Plan, which is a municipal planning tool aimed at remediating brownfield sites. So the application was received by 215-9417. I would note the typo in the report, by Paul Colangelo, owner of the Professional Center or Center Suites. So the application included the acknowledgement of the record of site condition by the MOE, as well as the Phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment, as well as copies of the paid invoices with respect to the remediation. There's a map attached, Appendix 3, that shows that the record of site condition only exists on a portion of the property. And the portion that's outlined in greeny yellow has the record of site condition. The area outlined in pink is subject to a site-specific risk assessment, and we understand that a second application will not be forthcoming. The qualified person who filed the record of site condition has confirmed for us, as per the requirements of the Environmental Protection Act, that there will be no residential occupancy in the area above the pink area prior to that record of site condition being acknowledged. So the eligible costs under the program are $520,000. Certainly the redevelopment of a partially vacant building on a brownfield site within our downtown is supported by the provincial policy, the city's official plan, and is in keeping with the community improvement plan for the creation of a strong and healthy community. So the recommendation and consideration of the report is that you approve the application under the Brownfield Financial Tax Incentive Program for Center Suites, and request financial services bring forward an agreement including the payment schedule, which would be over a 5-year period.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question or more clarification for people. But so right now, they spend $520,000 cleaning it up. They currently pay $113,000 in taxes. So that means the incentive for them to clean up this property and redevelopment, in year one, they'll pay.
Following the reassessment by MPAC after the property's redeveloped. So we'll have 32 new residential suites. So the taxes today, arguably $113,000. In the future, there'll be more. In year one, we'll take the difference between the taxes today and the future taxes and rebate 90% of that up until the point where it equals $520,000.
Thank you. I think a good explanation. It's an excellent program. You know, when you talk about redeveloping the community, this is one of the key ones. You've got some of these brownfield sites that are just so expensive to clean up, and how do you ever get them forward? Well, this is one of the ways. They spend the money, they rebate it on their taxes, and hopefully we are getting a successful development out of this. So anyway, I'll move the recommendation that we approve this Brownfield Financial Tax Assistance Program for 945 3rd Avenue East.
Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thanks. 12A6, Planning Assistant Severance Consent Agreements. Is that you? Did I skip 5? You know what? I saw the Central Suites and I skipped past it. Okay, 12A5, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. So the city has received a written request from Robson Carpenter, again on behalf of the Professional Center, for an exemption from the requirement for an application for draft plan of condominium. So as Council will recall, site plan approval was granted in 2013 to allow the residential redevelopment of a portion of this building. The Condominium Act provides the policy framework for you to consider this request. It's the first such request that city staff is aware of. So staff in planning did a lot of research to see what other municipalities do. There are still some things that should be considered, and that includes the things that are to be considered under the Planning Act, where a plan of condominium is considered, the requirements of our official plan, as well as the conditions that were imposed through site plan approval. All of those things, the requested exemption is appropriate, subject to confirmation that the requirements of the Environmental Protection Act can be satisfied. In consultation with the solicitor, the recommendation is that you approve the exemption request. We won't sign the certificate until or we won't sign the exemption until the record of site condition is acknowledged on the second portion. I would also note in the recommendation portion, the exemption that has come has the mayor, clerk, and director of community services signing that exemption. So that they're not changing their plans. If the bylaw could authorize mayor, clerk, and director to sign the exemption once we're satisfied that we have compliance with the Environmental Protection Act, and the wording would be as per Appendix G.
Any questions, discussion? Councillor Dodd?
I'd like to make the motion that we receive and what am I saying here? I'm spinning and sputtering.
You're moving the recommendation?
There we go. I'm moving the recommendation. I need to write these things down, I think.
Councillor Lemon?
Just one quick question on this. I realize it's the first time we've done it, and I don't have a problem with doing it in any way, shape, or form. I think what we're sending with this is a clear message out to the development community that we're willing to work with them, and that's a message we have to keep sending them, because that will encourage more people to come forward, because we do have some other sites in Owen Sound, which would be really nice to see something happen on. There's a number.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Anyone else? All in favor of the motion? Good, carried. Now I think I can get to 12A6, which is the severance consent agreements.
So Mr. Smith, if we could just go to page 2 so council can see the map. So in November of 2014, the Committee of Adjustment had approved 2 consents with respect to lands that are located on the west side of 16th Avenue East, north of 10th Street. So there's a retained lot that is the Anpet subdivision, so that's not subject to this report. But severed lot 1, which you'll see is the L-shaped parcel. It has 0.8 hectares of lot area, and we're expecting an application for a hotel on that property. Severed lot 2 has 122 meters of frontage, 1.12 hectares of lot area. One of the conditions imposed at the time of the creation of the lots was with respect to the payment of the outstanding charges related to infrastructure developments in this area. In this case, these costs were front-ended by the Blue Water School Board and Grey Bruce Health Services, and the city has best effort agreements with them. The costs owing are $291,943. The owner of the property and the applicant for the consent doesn't argue dispute the payment of the fee, but the issue is more with respect to timing. In order to allow us to finalize the consents, we talked to the city solicitor. We're recommending an agreement be prepared and registered. The bylaws here for you tonight, which would allow the severance condition to be finalized. The owner can have the deed stamped, transfer the properties, and the city is assured that those fees will be paid then as part of site plan approval. I think it's also important to realize that this is important to the person buying the property. They're going to buy it knowing that these fees are owing. It won't be a surprise to them. So the recommendation, Your Worship, is to respecting the severance agreement, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreements attached to Schedule A and coordinate with the city solicitor for those agreements to be registered on title, noting that the expense is at the expense of the owner.
Okay, Councillor Kepke.
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. It just occurred to me, so this is for the severed part. What about the retained part? The money owing on the retained portion?
Through you, Your Worship, the retained lands are subject to a draft plan of subdivision, and there are conditions there that would address the payment of those fees through the draft plan conditions on that residential subdivision.
But the plan before us certainly isn't am I not looking at the right it's commercial, it's not residential anymore.
Yeah, so the first map, the retained piece, I can't recall what year, but council had given
Sorry.
draft plan approval to a residential subdivision in that area. So the severed lots are only on the square at the front, and then if we go to the next page, you'll see the blow-up only on the square. So those are, you're right, commercial developments, but the retained piece is a residential piece.
The severed portion, the entire, you mentioned the hotel, all of the lots are being severed, 1 and 2.
Severed lot 1 would contain the hotel. The retained portion, which isn't on this map, is the residential plan of subdivision.
Right, what about lot, can you go back up, sorry, Mr. Chair?
Lots-
Severed lot 2.
Severed lots, sorry, Jeff, if you can go back to, severed lots 1 and 2 are just in the little square.
Right.
See the attached
Yep.
blow-up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So my question is, there's 2 severed lots here,
that's correct,
owned by the same person,
right. There would be separate agreements for each.
for each lot?
Yes, sorry.
And okay, so that was my question. The retained portion then, this 291 is just what, based on a square acreage, a footage? The retained portion will owe, the residential retained portion will owe a certain amount as well, whenever they develop?
The residential portion is addressed through the draft plan of subdivision conditions. The fees are just looking at the memo from engineering services are based on frontage.
Frontage, okay, thank you.
I think Councillor Lyman was next on the list.
I was going to move the motion. All in favor of doing this.
Snooze, you lose. You missed.
Well, it was just that I felt very strongly we should agree with it.
Good, thank you. Councillor Greg.
Thank you, Mayor Boy. I just, for clarification, within the motion, is it anticipating the payment of 291 due in advance, or is it listening to the individual here and putting it at site approval?
At the time of site plan
Okay.
approval, yes.
Okay, all in favor? That is carried. So I think we're down to 12A7. Is that you again?
So, Your Worship, in June of 2013, Health Canada introduced new medical for marijuana purposes regulations, which provided the impetus for the city to review our land use policies. Oh, sorry. With respect to medical marijuana. So, following 2 presentations to CPAC, a public meeting was held on February 9th. There was a technical report that outlined the proposed amendment, and the purpose of this report this evening is to respond to comments received through that public process. The comments from the County of Grey are addressed in the draft zoning bylaw. Site plan approval is required, and the definition of a medical marijuana production facility references the federal regulations. So I think their comments are included in the bylaw. Comments were also received from Dustin McGregor. There were 2 sets of comments, one amended on February 10th, and those are attached to the report. Just to address the comments from Mr. McGregor, staff did not initiate the review or create a bylaw in response to any particular proposal or person. They were initiated with the changes at the federal level. The production of marijuana in homes is not permitted by the Health Canada regulations, so despite our wishes, we wouldn't be able to permit them in residential areas of the city or where residential uses would be permitted. The official plan on lands designated employment in the city, the use is to be manufacturing, assembly, processing, packaging, warehousing. And when you look at the medical for marijuana purposes regulation, the permitted activities within that regulation mirror very much the permitted uses within that employment designation. So based on the conclusion really is that the MMPR is administered by the federal government. Licensed producers must follow all other applicable law, including municipal zoning bylaw. There is no provincial guideline For MMPFs at a local level, municipalities have flexibility to consider policies that fit our context. Our official plan is the council's contract with the community about how our community will grow and develop. The medical marijuana facilities are considered most appropriate to be located in that M1 and M, or employment designation within the M1 and M2 zones. The recommendation then is that council approve bylaw 2015-028 and that you, that the clerk give notice of that passing.
Okay, yeah, I think Councillor Lemon had his hand up. Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
I would certainly move the recommendation. This is the creation of perhaps up to 100 jobs in our community, jobs that are badly needed, and let's do everything we can to facilitate the development of this plant.
Thank you. Further comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Coulter. I think, oh no, you probably get the next one too, do you?
One World Festival.
12A8, event facilitator. Is that?
Yeah, so at your meeting in January, council had a deputation from the One World Festival, and you asked for a report back with respect to what was being asked that evening. They've asked that you approve the closing of the parking lot on May the 22nd for the event, to allow them to hold the festival on city property, as well as the farmers market and the Percy England Parquet on May 22nd, that you waive the fee for tent permit and you support the event through publicity, attendance by council and staff. So the costs for supporting their request, the tent permit fee would be $200. The delivery of garbage barrel and picnic tables would be $216, and then there is some staff time to support the event. The recommendation is that council approve closure of the City Hall and Market parking lot from 7 till 5 on May 22nd, that we promote the festival through city channels, that we deliver and pick up barricades and recycling carts. There is no fee for that, and that any approval would be subject to them providing the $2 million liability insurance, which they've provided other years, and that you would require the fee for tent permit, picnic, and garbage barrel delivery to be paid.
Councillor McManaman, or sorry, the other way. The other Councillor McManaman, Councillor Lemon, twins.
The good-looking one. I couldn't resist that. A question. Last year, I seem to think we did waive some of those fees for the One World Festival. Did we not?
My understanding is that last year they were required to pay for picnic tables and garbage and for the tent permit, that those fees were not waived.
Oh, we didn't waive any last year, though?
The resolution from March 17th, 2014 is there. You closed the parking lot, you promoted the event through city channels, and we had delivery of city services with any applicable fees payable by the event organizer. So those were not waived last year.
Okay, in that case, I'll move the recommendation as is.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now Ms. Coulter's off the hook, I think. Now that her voice is gone, I think it's Mr. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I'll get you to hit that button, Ken, for the, there we go.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. The draft development charges bylaw has been circulated to council for your consideration and hopefully passage this evening. As you're aware, the current bylaw lapses, I believe, on the 11th of this month, so council has to consider the bylaw at its current date, or tonight, or call a special meeting of council to consider it at a later date. I'd like to go through just a bit of a concurrence. council passed a resolution that carried forward the current exemptions that were in the previous bylaw. And as you can see, the draft bylaw carries on with that list of exemptions. You requested that there be an exemption for nonprofit housing, and that it be defined clearly in the bylaw. So section 1.2 provides the bylaw, the definition for the bylaw, and then as you can see in section 8.1.6, that provision has been carried out. You requested by resolution that the industrial developments be exempt from development charges. And again, in the draft bylaw before you, section 1.18 gives definition, and then also 8.1.5 gives the force and effect to the proposed exemption. You asked that the area-specific development charges be implemented in accordance with background study, and I would draw council's attention to Schedule C, which sets out the area-specific development charges for the Sydenham Heights development area. You asked that the City Council phase in the non-residential charges from $1.85 to $3 a square foot over the term of the bylaw. And again, if I can draw your attention to Schedules B1 to B5, that direction has been carried out. You requested that all citywide residential development charges, a 2-year development charge holiday be in place from 2015 to 2016. I would draw your attention to Schedules B1 and B2, which gives force and effect to that. You further requested that the residential development charges be phased in years 3 at $5,000 per unit, and in 2018 and 2019 that the charge be $7,008. And again, I would draw your attention to Schedules B3, B4, and B5, which give force and effect to that. You requested that during the period of the residential development charge holiday, municipal tax revenue be set aside from the supplementary taxes, and to make up for the lost revenue from the development charge. And the Director of Finance will supply you with an annual statement of the value of that supplementary taxation and what the state of that reserve is for the 2-year holiday period. Timely construction was another big concern as it related to the holiday, and I would draw council's attention to section 10 of the bylaw. The way that the consultant has recommended that this be implemented is that the full charge as set out in Schedule B5 will be applied to all development during the period of the holiday. If an occupancy permit is issued within the 1-year time horizon from the issuance of the building permit, then the development charge paid will be rebated back to the developer as required to achieve the amount set out in the bylaw. And that's the end of the presentation, Your Worship. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I believe there is one, Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, if you could go back to that last page.
Certainly.
Where you want to get the money for development charges paid to the city in trust or by a letter of credit. I do not agree with that. That is backdooring. They're still now going to have to put the money up. They're not going to have to pay it, but they're going to have to put the money up at the front end of the construction. And that's when builders don't want any additional charges. And I do not feel that there's anything gained by this move, except that the city's got the money in their hot little hands. I believe that this should be those sections pertaining to the occupancy, 10.3, I guess it is, 10.3, 1, 3, 2, and 3.3. I do not agree with them in terms of this idea of taking the money at the beginning. As soon as they apply for a building permit, they have to pay the development charges or a letter of credit, which is the same thing. It's costing the developer money. This was not the intent of what I voted for. I voted to have a 2-year holiday. Holiday means nothing. You don't get the development charges from the developer. And I believe this is counter to what the resolution was of council. And I would ask that those sections be removed which pertain to taking a payment in lieu of development charges, which are later going to refund. I really think that's backward thinking.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. I'm sure Councillor Lemon read the minutes earlier that in great detail discussed our hour-and-a-half, maybe 2-hour meeting we had discussing this item, and that was I think that is the exact wording that was in those minutes. So that is exactly what we discussed. You talked about it's not helpful. I think every member of this council compromised and came to a successful resolution of this matter. If we want to reopen every point, Councillor Lemon, we're going to be here for a long time. This council came together, made a decision. Your Worship, I would move the adoption of the bylaw, or move the adoption of this report. I guess the bylaws later.
Okay, further discussion?
I will ask for a vote of record. I will vote against this because I don't, where did this idea of this charge, the money, holding the money, come from? Was that the consultant or was that city staff?
The concept or the philosophy behind what's in the bylaw was actually at the direction of council, who were concerned about the timely construction of the works. And you very specifically requested that we examine mechanisms that would ensure that that the holiday was used for the purpose for which it was intended, to spur on development and so forth. So in fact, that has been put into the bylaw. At the end of it all, the developer has a strong inducement to complete the construction within the 1 year time horizon, and at the same time, it gives effect to the holiday by returning the funds in their totality back to the developer during the holiday period, as well as ensuring that timely construction occurs throughout the term of the bylaw.
And there are no other alternative ways of achieving this other than asking for a full development charge. I assume it's $5,000.
No, if you read the bylaw, what the bylaw says is that the full charge as laid out in Schedule B5 will be paid at the time of issuance of the building permit, and that it will be rebated to the extent of compliance with Schedules B1 to B5 on the issuance of the occupancy permit.
Now, there's all money goes back.
No, that's not the case. In the case of B1, which applies to the current year, yes, it would be rebated completely. So $7,008 would be returned back to the developer. In year 2, the same thing would occur. In year 3, only $2,008 would be rebated back, and in years 4 and 5, nothing would be rebated back because you're complying with council's direction with respect to the phasing in of the bylaw.
Just a quick question. Is this not exactly what the city did in 2009? Yeah, okay. Councillor Kepke?
The amount paid by the developer, is that cash or check to the city, or is it a letter of credit?
It could be any form of security, as long as it's
So is it a security that the city will cash, or the city will
No, we would
hold?
retain it. We would hold it.
So a letter of credit is sufficient?
I would say yes.
If it's a letter of credit, we would not cash it unless it was required. If it was a check or cash, we certainly would deposit it immediately.
But you'd hold it in trust, basically, to the end. Yeah.
That's correct.
Good. Okay, other questions? All in favor of the motion? It is carried, and I believe there's a recorded vote.
Councillor Dodd,
In favor?
Councillor Gregg,
In favor?
Councillor Kepke,
In favor?
Councillor Lemon, Councillor McManaman,
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary,
In favor.
Councillor Thomas,
In favor?
Mayor Body.
In favor?
Resolution is carried with 7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. What are we down to? 12A10, report from environmental superintendent with regard to estoppel certificates for solar installations. Are you doing that one, Mr. Beckman?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Council approved 3 installations for solar panels on properties owned by the city. The arrangement is that we will lease the property to the developer, who will put on panels for a 20-year time period, and we will receive a rent payment varying upwards of up to $35,000 per annum. The proponent sells the energy back to Hydro One, or Hydro Generation OPG, and they make their profit off of the sale of the energy. The estoppel agreements are required to ensure that we are the owner of the property and that there are no other interests in the property. This is a precursor for the developer to get their financing in place. It's a matter of legal formality. Council considered all these matters at the time that they passed the resolution to approve the development in the first place. So really what we're looking at here is a housekeeping matter to move the initiative forward, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Dodd,
I'd like to move the recommendation.
further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Good, thank you. What are we down to? Consent agendas? Ms. Bertha, sorry, what was I thinking? Ms. Bloomfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. The consent agenda includes a report respecting a request to amend the hours of the licensed area for the Provincial Broomball Championship, a planning report for which the city has no comment, several planning notices for which the city has no comment, and correspondence that has been received that is being presented for the information of council.
Any questions? Motion to receive. Councillor Kepke, all in favor? Oops.
We need to approve
Sorry.
12B1, I believe.
Yeah,
And do we need an approval on 2? Approval on 1 and 2, and then receive the remainder.
sorry, I misled you there. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Minutes of boards and committees, Accessibility Advisory Committee, Councillor Lemon, you presenting those minutes?
Yes, Your Worship, I would move to approve the accessibility minutes from January, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the date, 23rd. Or February 23rd, sorry. We didn't have a meeting in January.
Want to give any discussion on it or explain anything, or?
No, we constantly are moving ahead with, and we're going to be looking at the status of the current policy and procedures regarding specialized transit, which haven't been updated for about 15 to 17 years, and that's going to be a project for the new year. This was the first meeting of the new committee as such, and so it was getting to know everybody, and it was a very positive meeting as far as I'm concerned. And I think that we're going to see more things happening, and I'm hoping we will see some new initiatives. Not on the tax bill.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I just have a quick question here about item 7B. There's quite a lengthy list of things here that we're asking our operator of the accessible transit to comply with, and I know that we do have a contract, in fact, with our transit operator, and I'm just wondering what the impact of this set of motions will have on that contract, if any. I wonder if we can have a comment on that.
If I could comment as to the reason for those motions. The reason for those motions was because we are getting a lot of reports that people are not able to reasonably book the specialized transit with reasonable notice, and we want to find out, is it that busy, and what is the rejection rate, and not able to book. And that comes under the Ontarians with Disabilities Act, that you have to provide timely service.
Okay, I'd like to get an answer for Councillor Thomas's question. I think Mr. Becking, do you want to answer that?
Your Worship, under the contract, the contractor is required to provide or maintain certain statistics with respect to performance. In terms of delivery of specialty transit services, these are quite normal measures to be maintained so that you can evaluate the effectiveness of your program. And so they'll, I don't see any difficulty in asking them to carry out this analysis.
Okay, thank you. Going down to Councillor Gregg next.
Thank you, Mayor By. I have a comment on item 7E, and it's the specific of requesting a report from operations regarding strategy to ensure volume levels. I rode the buses last Friday mornings, and I don't think we need to have our operations department come up with a strategy on that. It's the drivers were more than friendly and very accommodating and recognized the individuals who have an issue, and being able to adjust the volume levels in the new buses is simply a matter of reaching over and doing so. So I do not want to support additional work to our staff. I don't think it's necessary.
Councillor McManaman, I think, was next, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. I just noticed there's a number of issues, or a number of motions in these minutes. Transit is handled under the Operations Committee, not the Accessibility Committee. So any of these motions which may be in order would go to the Operations Committee. That's who deals with transit. So that would just be a point of order.
Great. Councillor Kepke.
Under item 6C, they're requesting that council consider reversing the Brook route. So I think
That's been done.
that's been done.
My understanding from Mr. Becking is that they're now going to be on the right side of the road at the 14th Street apartment buildings.
I'd like to hear.
Your Worship, there'll be a report coming back to council at the March 16th session that will deal with all of this.
So what the heck do we do with these minutes then? We've got receive and don't approve?
Well,
Forward to, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that are, go ahead, Councillor Lemon.
well, the issue of accessible transit is a little different than general transit. And in the past, there have been recommendations from the Accessibility Committee vis-a-vis accessible transit. The reviewer for that, for instance, is a member of that committee. I personally think that I'd like to have a more full discussion, not tonight, it's been a long day, on where transit belongs, because I think it's misplaced under operations.
So do we receive these and send it off to operations to review? I mean, there's a whole bunch of recommendations that aren't really suggestions or, Councillor McManaman, you had your hand up.
What I was going to say is I think there's 5 different recommendations that are recommending 5 different committees do things for this committee, and I'm just not sure that's the way the system's supposed to work. So I don't have an answer of how you deal. I mean, there are some things that are legitimate questions. I don't know how you know, I don't think it's appropriate for one committee to direct the police services that they have to do something, and then the next motion's directing operations that they have to do something, and the next. Some of them are easy answers. I'm not sure how you deal with them, but I don't know if you want to approve them. You certainly receive them, and then, I don't know, look to staff.
Perhaps receive and forward to the appropriate committees. There's a question under the AOTA, under the responsibility for there to be an accessible taxi cab, at least one in Owen Sound. And there's a question about whether or not that's required or whether it's optional. And we're waiting to get back a interpretation on that.
So Councillor Kapke, thank you.
With respect to the accessible taxi cab, Police Services has dealt with that in the term that I was on, and it is optional, and have not instigated any mandatory accessible taxi at this point. And also, Your Worship, perhaps, it's all the items under number 7 that have been referred, so perhaps we can receive or approve the minutes, save and accept item 7 being received and referred to the various departments for reports.
Well, no, I think Councillor Lemon has a motion on, so it would be requesting Councillor Lemon, I think, to amend his motion.
Amend my motion. I
Is
consider
there any
that a
other
friendly
comment?
amendment.
Is there any other comments with regard to that suggestion? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor of that? Carried. Councillor Lemon, I notice that all these motions are yours. You've been around here long enough.
Well, I was trying to get them on because the people who know the most about the problems with accessibility in terms of bus utilization is not operations, it's specialized who are people who actually use the service.
And the person that knows the most about the procedure after a number of years is you. We'll move on. Minutes of Economic Development and Tourism Advisory, new chair. Councillor Thomas, if you want to present those.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. It was an interesting first meeting at Economic Development. We spent a bit of time discussing the work plan for the coming year and proposed economic development strategy for the community. And we did have some brief discussion about the committee's role in the terms of reference, because there have been a few difficulties in past times obtaining a quorum at that committee. So we will, at some point in the near future, be bringing a recommendation forward on that. I just wanted to remind everyone at home and here in the council chamber that Savor Owen Sound is on presently. Eat, drink, and be merry. A number of participating restaurants, but the print isn't big enough, so I'll have to put my glasses on. Elsie's Diner, the Harrison Park Inn, Legacy Ridge Golf Club, Nathaniel's, Norma Jean's, Villanina, Sweetwater Restaurant at Cobble Beach. They all have wonderful 3-course meal deals for a special price, and that continues until March the 20th. So I'd encourage everyone to take part. And I would like to move that we accept, we approve the minutes. Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
What a radio voice. All in favor of approving the, sorry, question first.
Just a quick
Councillor
question.
McMahon.
Councillor Dodd, in the minutes it talks about a youth working group, and I found that interesting. What exactly is that, or what's proposed there?
So in the youth work group, it actually came from a subcommittee that was formed in the Economic Development Committee last term. So actually on there is a manager of economic development, Steve Furness, the manager of the Small Business Center, Jane Phillips, Pam Levere, who is a public appointee on the Economic Development Committee, and a couple other youth in the region who are kind of want to get together and just kind of create a way for, try to make a connection for youth in the region. We always hear this thing in the community that youth don't have, there's not employment for youth and these challenges, so we wanted to find a way of getting as many youth together in a form like a creative mixer style like we've done in the past. and bringing in some educated and well-established business individuals in the community and bring them in towards with the youth that are in the community currently. I think what Steve and I were in discussions about was trying to make it more of a focal point on youth being the main speakers for these. So hearing the success stories of Owen Sound youth and kind of really making that networking and kind of helping with the whole sense of that there's a lot of challenges that youth do face in the region and trying to come to unison and trying to find the best way to do it. So that's kind of what that working group is going on. So we're in the midst of finalizing when a proper date will be set for that. And once that comes forward, we'll be sure to let everyone know about it.
Do you want to define youth, just to clarify that?
What's the term? Under 40, I believe, is the current term. Is that, or under 30? Anyone? I think we're all youthful at heart, so I think that'll all work. So
well, that's what had me confused, because Councillor Lemon, of course, falls under youthful too. So, all in favor of approval of those minutes? Carried. Thank you. Recreation and Parks. Who's doing that? Chair McManaman or Vice Chair Dodd? Chair McManaman.
I'll let him do the next minutes to come forward.
On your toes.
Thank you, Worship. This was the inaugural meeting of the new committee. We went over the committee orientation work plan, and I might ask in a minute, ask Ms. Coulter to just hit some of the highlights of that work plan for 2015. Just for those interested, we did change the meeting time to starting at 5, so if anyone's interested in coming to the meetings, it's a second Thursday at 5 o'clock now. The volunteer of the year, we amended the criteria and scoring of how we'll do volunteer of the year. That's happening and it'll be coming to council in a short period of time. A new banner policy for the city for hanging banners for provincial, national, regional, or local events. For a number of years now, there haven't really been any banners hung in our facilities. This policy would address that and allow banners to be put up again. You know, the size of the banners, where they'll go, when they'll go up, an application form. Anyway, just sort of a process to it for people that bring that forward. Yeah, that's about it, other than, if I could ask Ms. Coulter, just some of the highlights. I was going to do it, and I thought, might as well let the expert do it.
Okay, in terms of the Parks and Open Space Work Plan, undertaking the purchase of new fleet, completing the Emerald Ash Borer management plan, as well as the street tree inventory, some upgrades at the Tom Williams Park, completing the office renovations at Greenwood Cemetery and some work up there, including work on the mausoleum roof scuppers, the mesh at Duncan McClellan Park. In terms of recreation events and culture, minor sport registration, put a plug in for our last night, March the 10th. Ice allocation, fall ice, if you can believe it, will be allocated by March 15th. Getting ready for Springfest. We're all ready for summer programs. We have a number of new agreements with the Agricultural Society, Putt and Paddle, the Catholic School Board, and we'll be looking at a resource manual for events, and that ties in with an initiative in the cultural area for events, and including sporting events. So lots going on in those areas.
That's all I would just highlight. I would move those minutes. The minor sports registration is next Tuesday, November 10th, again, 5:30 to 8 o'clock at the Bay Shore, all summer minor sports. Tuesday, November 10th, 5:30 to 8. What did I say?
Time flies.
I wrote, and to make sure I got it right, I wrote it down, and I wrote down November 10th. So there you go. Tuesday, March, thank you, Councillor Gepke. Tuesday, March 10th, next Tuesday, March 10th, 5:30 to 8, all summer minor sports registration.
Okay, so
move those minutes.
All in favor of approval of those minutes? Carried. Thank you. And the last one is wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just one quick correction on the top of page 3 of 5. It has me moving a motion. I believe it's Councillor Thomas, so if that could just be amended. Because as chair, I wouldn't be allowed to move the minutes. We're going to meet the wastewater treatment plan as we get closer to its ongoing construction and completion. We're going to meet on a regular basis now, the 4th Tuesday of every month. We set out a process of how we're going. We looked at the 3-week schedule. That's how they do it in 3-week spurts. So we'll look at each 3 weeks period. the process for using the contingency. There's a sizable contingency in this project, as you can imagine, of a $48 million project. The process and all the different amendments or changes that will come forward, as you see them listed here, there's a number. They come to the committee, and the committee will approve them or look at them. The biggest one change here is a change in the architect, the outside of the building and how it'll look, and a potential cost saving of $51,000 there. So that was good. The only other thing on here, no, I think yep, that's pretty well. Again, and we discussed one of the other items earlier with Mr. Becking about the outfall project, but that's already been discussed by council. So I would move these minutes for approval.
Okay, Councillor Kepke?
Just one comment on item 7C. The motion says that the wastewater treatment plant ad hoc committee received the verbal report. It needs a little bit more meat in that motion.
That, if you look right about, that is all that right there.
But verbal report respecting what? It needs to stand alone, the motion does, so. Just so it has a little bit more detail in the motion.
Okay, so a verbal report on the project status.
Right.
And discussion, re-tender results of the outfall project.
Right.
Fair enough.
If that could be an amendment,
Yep.
please.
Sure.
You got that? Good, thanks. Okay, so approval with amendment of those minutes. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Minutes have been camera. We're down to 12D on the agenda. Minutes of in-camera meetings for approval, 12D1. Councillor, do you want to move them all?
I will move D1, 2, and 3, which are minutes of the in-camera meetings held February 9th and 20th of the wastewater.
Good. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks. We're down to other business, and I have Councillor Gregg going first with regard to source protection, water source protection.
Thank you, Mayor Body. At 2:44 p.m. today, Council received an email from the Source Water Committee making us aware of some public consultation periods which were held in February, and subsequently our opportunity to comment as a municipality ceases as of March 6th. We will be working extremely hard as a new council on creating economic development and growth in our community. And here's a piece of policy being generated right now in draft form, which none of us were aware of until a verbal report in the committee last Wednesday afternoon. And I do wonder if we can make a polite request that the Source Water Committee would extend or consider extending for at least another month and give us the opportunity to be able to review the draft, which is extremely extensive, very hard to grasp over a couple days of last-minute notice.
Okay, would you send it to a committee then, or?
I think it would be best reviewed by each member of this council to look as to how it would affect our town. It involves implementing new source water rules around the Great Lakes, but it may impact everything from our ability to create a new gas station in Owen Sound to our ability to perhaps contain fuel at our public works, to our ability to have road salt dumped at the P&H elevators. It's extremely extensive and hard to be able to cover this in a couple of days.
Other comments? Ms. Corsi?
Thank you. I'd like to get a little better handle on this, and certainly it could go to operations, but it could equally go to planning as well. So let's, if you could have it referred to the appropriate committee once we've seen the documentation, would that work? And then we'll immediately request an extension.
Well, we are essentially out of time, so what I'm wondering is if can council tonight make a polite request to the Source Water Committee to consider extending their deadline, because it's essentially passed for municipalities to comment.
Mr. Becking?
Your Worship, I brought this matter to the Operations Committee's attention at our last meeting last Wednesday, and I have direction to write a letter of response and concern with respect to the proposals that were put forward. So I think at this point, certainly I've got enough direction to proceed. My understanding is that the comment period is up on the 6th of March, and the Source Water Protection Committee will be meeting in mid-March in order to finalize their recommendations to the province by the end of March. The Source Water Committee's direction from the province is that they must submit not later than the end of March. So with respect, we can request an extension of a month, but we will not get it. They have been quite categoric in that regard.
So we have till the 6th to respond?
Until Friday, yes, Your Worship, that is correct.
And Operations asked you to do the letter?
They did.
And what else are you doing this week?
Oh, it'll get done in between betwixt and between all the other little odds and sods that I have to do.
Given that you're the Iceman,
I've been called worse.
Will you be able to do it?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's already in rough draft. I have to circulate it to Ms. Coulter to get her input on it. And between Ms. Coulter and the city manager, the three of us will get it out in time.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Gregg. Does that satisfy your concern as best we can?
Well, we're pretty much, we don't have a whole lot of options on this one or time. It's something that can really handcuff council down the road, and this is something that I don't think should happen where we get blindsided like this right across the side of the head.
Hey, Councillor Lemon first, and then I'll go back to Councillor.
Okay, I have a question. When did the city get this? How long ago?
Less than 2 weeks ago.
Is there any explanation? I mean, even 2 weeks ago, it only gave you 3 weeks to respond to a major policy statement. That is getting to the point of being ridiculous.
And I think, Your Worship, that's one of the comments that has to be put forward to the Source Water Protection Committee. The city has repeatedly been told over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that our intake was not at risk for a whole variety of reasons, which would take me a month of Sundays to explain to you. But suffice it to say that up until about 2 weeks ago, we were under the very clear understanding that our intake was not in any way at risk or vulnerable, and therefore there would be no planning or policy documents or policy statements that would impact the city. And it's only been in this last 2 weeks that has changed. With the value of hindsight, I think we can connect the dots back to November and December of last year when we were requested tidbits of information. But the reality of the situation is we only knew, or we were only told at a information session that was held on, I believe, the 23rd or 24th of February, last Wednesday, that in fact our intake would be subject to restrictions and controls. So we've got essentially a week and a half to respond to this.
Yeah, well, I'm in sort of a state of shock because I can remember it was 1 or 2 years ago, it could have been 3 years ago, we were told, oh, you don't have any problem with your intake, da-da-da-da-da. Now all of a sudden we're finding there may be an issue. And do we have an appointee to that source water protection? I thought we did.
As I understand it, former Councillor Twaddle represents a number of municipalities, but he is appointed as a member of the public. He is not, he was not and is not a representative of the city of Owen Sound.
Councilor McManaman can maybe help me out, but my understanding is that that is on some kind of a local board on implementation of the last round of directions, not necessarily this, if I'm not mistaken.
Twaddle, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I think he's involved with this too. This
Okay.
will go to him. His appointment is until, I believe it's another 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 more years, so he's still.
So I'm wrong.
But I had some comments, but Mr. Becking said them perfectly. Up until 2 weeks ago, this source water protection, we didn't really have any concerns. Now we're finding out they've changed it and given us March 6th to comment. So that's going to be an extremely, they have made, all along the way over the last 8 years, they have implemented suggestions, policies, but there's been more than ample time for all of those other communities to comment, work with them. Basically, they're saying here that we have March 6th to comment, so.
I'm going to go to
not sure how that's going to
Ms.
work.
Coulter and then to Councillor Gregg, and then we'll move on since it's 10. And
Your Worship, I was just going to mention that former Councillor Twaddle did call and make sure that we were aware of the open house and the information session, and that we were aware of the changes. So we certainly appreciated that and had staff at those meetings last week.
good, thank you. Councillor Gregg, get you to wrap it up.
And just last comment is that there was actually a meeting held in Owen Sound in our Bay Shore in the sound room on Tuesday, February 24th, and not one member of council knew about it.
Interesting. Thank you. One more, Councillor Kepke, and then we'll move on to...
Is there a motion on the floor to any effect at all?
No, I don't think we need to, because I think we've already got the directions from operations to send a letter, and Mr. Becking's working on the letter.
So in that, will you be requesting for more time to comment in the future?
I will be requesting for more time, but the reality of the situation is we won't get it. And so therefore, I'm taking this as the opportunity to get our points across as clearly and succinctly as I can.
Sorry, one more, Councillor McManaman.
Just thinking we probably do need a motion to direct him to send the letter, because the operations minute won't come here till after.
Fair
He's
enough.
already supposed to send the letter.
Okay, so that's
why don't we just
Councillor
make
Gregg's motion,
Yeah.
I think, that you're making that motion.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Do you consider a friendly amendment that in our letter to them, we request that we be given better notice than occurred on this occasion in future?
Absolutely.
Yep, good. All in favor? Good, carried. Thank you. Councillor O'Leary, I have you next on the list.
Thank you, Your Worship. On a positive note, I'd like to send out a big old pat in the back to, through Mr. Becking, to our Works Department crew, who I've seen out digging holes at minus 26-degree weather, and boy, they've been having a tough time. I know there's a lot of people upset, but these guys are really working hard, and we certainly appreciate that. And just quickly, I had an email that kind of landed on my lap from a person that was that sent out a bit of a play-by-play about the fire on 2nd Avenue East, and this person that sent out the email was totally misinformed. So Councillor Dodd and myself are both on the Fire Services Committee, and we got a play-by-play from the Acting Fire Chief, Tom Potter. And I can tell you just a couple of facts that the fire department had water on this fire within 7 minutes of getting their call. And all of the firefighters were called in, and I think when all of the firefighters are called, if there's a firefighter that just happens to be on 20 days off and happens to be in Barrie, he will still get the call and he can still come. And it's when these guys are called, it's not necessarily to fight that particular fire, it's just to have everybody on board in case something else happens, which is the same with the Intertownship Fire Department. When a person says we could have saved those 2 houses if we had called the Intertownship Fire Department sooner, is totally false. The Intertownship Fire Department was called to be on standby in case something else happened other than the fire. So we had enough people working in the fire, and they were on it soon enough, And the Intertownship Fire Department was there. I think they might have assisted in moving hoses or something, but they were mostly there in case we needed help had another call come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becking, can you give us an update on frozen pipes?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, just to bring council up to speed, we've been having problems with frozen pipes and burst pipes now since about the beginning of February. We typically have between 25 and 40 breaks a year. For a good chunk of the first 3 weeks in February, it was business as usual. We started, however, to see a pattern about the 20th, so just before the end of the third week of February, where we were starting to lose some ground. At that point, we had already started to get people to run water in areas where we knew we'd have problems. We learned a lot last winter. I gather was a rather harsh winter, and we ended up with frozen services in places where we had not previously had frozen services. So we had a staged response to those areas, and in fact we've been asking people to run water in certain locations since the middle of February or even earlier. So that had already been underway, but at about the 20th of the month, we were starting to lose ground. And by early the following week, it was becoming quite obvious that we were very much losing ground. We've started keeping records on the 21st, and this chart gives you an illustration of what's happened since the 21st. On the 21st, you can see we had approximately 20 services reported as being frozen, and that has climbed to something in the order of 186 as of yesterday. Our typical response is to go in and attempt to thaw the service as the first approach, if we can, because it's a permanent solution. We thought it's done. We tell the folks to run their water, and their life goes back to normal. Where we cannot, for a variety of reasons, get access to the service or the main, then our second choice is to connect them to another source of water, and at least that will provide them with water until we can effect a more permanent repair. So this red line here represents those services that we have either permanently or temporarily addressed. And as you can see, as of yesterday, we were up in the order of 80 services that had been addressed to one degree or another. Therefore, the backlog being the difference between the two, as of yesterday, was sitting up around 102 or 103 services. In terms of location, generally speaking, the areas of frozen pipe are, for the most part, isolated into the older sections of the city. So both east and west, 10th, 9th, 8th, and first, second, third, basically either way of the river. The rest of them are, by and large, fairly spotty, but there are some accumulations in areas. I would say that at this point we are seeing frozen services on an unprecedented scale. We have frozen services in places where we have never We have no historical record of there ever being any frozen services in those locations. So what have we done? The public has been advised to turn on their taps in the critical areas, as well as at schools and homes for the aged. So the critical areas are those areas that we know we have a problem, or we have a history of having had a problem in those locations. Schools and homes for the aged, simply because they're classified as potentially vulnerable populations, children, young children, and seniors who may be. We've enlisted the assistance of our friends from the media in getting the word out to the public as to what we'd like them to do. We've provided temporary connections wherever possible, just to get people water and ask them to keep those services going once we've restored them. We've thawed services wherever possible. The most recent was this morning. The police station advised that they lost water. Crews worked through the entire day. I have a picture on my cell phone from staff, a 6-inch water main and a solid plug of ice, and that extended for a considerable length of time. Staff started working on that about 8 o'clock this morning, and I got word that it had finally been restored at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. That's a positive thing, and I give staff a big pat on the back for having done that. That having been said, that's one service. There are 102 or 3 just like it throughout the city. So we focused a lot of resources on one service for all the very good and right reasons, but at the end of the day, it was a service that took resources from other locations. And we're still having broken water mains. The latest was at 10th Avenue East and 10th Street on Saturday afternoon about 2 o'clock. That main broke and was bubbling up through the street. We ended up having to close both streets, and that service was restored late in the evening on Saturday evening. So this map illustrates the critical or important areas where we know that we have problems. We started out just on the east side of the river in this area here. Our concern is that we don't want everybody running their water, because we need a reserve of water in case we have a fire or something like that. So we needed to be very cautious about how many people we have running their water on a continuous basis. We've expanded that to include other areas on the east side as well as on the west side of the river. And this map illustrates the current advisories that have been issued. This graph illustrates how the flows at the plant have changed since we've put in place the advisory. So we started out with a normal flow on an average day of being around 80,000 or 8,000 cubic meters a day. And as you can see, that's gradually increased we're now about 13,000. We need to keep that down at around 50% of the plant's capacity to produce water so that we have enough for fire flows. And that's what the blue line represents, which is the capacity of the plant at about 27,500 cubic meters a day. In terms of priority for service, we have developed a priority system for addressing concerns. Our first priority is anyone who has medical conditions or is in any way vulnerable, and we need to get them water. So they're at the top of our list.
Second priority are those residents who use heated water as a means of heating their homes, and so boiler systems and the like. And the reason for that, very simply, is when you're dealing with the kinds of temperatures that we've been dealing with over the last little while, it's one thing to lose your water, but it's quite another to lose the heat in your home as well. Third priority is devoted to businesses. You know, people need paychecks, people need to make a living, and we can't afford to have businesses shut down because they don't have water. And then finally, all other requests. We have also instituted other measures in that we've provided means for people to get water through the Bay Shore and also at the rec center. The water depot has been gracious in providing residents with free water should they need it. As well, the YMCA has been a real partner in coming forward and allowing people to use their facilities for showering and the like, so that for the most part it's an inconvenience, but at least there's a means to address basic human concerns. In terms of financial impacts, as far as from the resident's perspective, people will not be charged for the extra consumption, whether they're connected to their neighbors and their neighbor is seeing double the consumption because there's two people feeding off of one service, or what have you, or if they're being asked to run their water, they will not be charged for the extra usage. All billings, at least for February and March, will be based on historical use, so that they won't be out of pocket as a result of any of this. In terms of the cost to the city, I can assure you that this is going to be very expensive. And I guess I'm giving council notice that obviously this is something that we can't control, but we have an obligation to respond. You know, in terms of cost per service to provide temporary water, we're looking at, you know, hundreds of dollars in staff time and resources and equipment and so forth just to provide a temporary service. If we get into something more elaborate, we have to start excavating. It can be thousands of dollars, and it's not inexpensive. So the key messages that I'd like to leave council with, in those designated areas, we want people to run their water at a rate of at least a gallon a minute. So what that means is the stream out of the tap should be about the size of the diameter of my finger, and that water should run 24/7. Do not turn it off, and do not turn it off until the city puts out a notice to do so. The frost we're still experiencing freezing temperatures. That frost is still being driven down into the ground, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So we have to keep that going. If residents lose water, please call us as quickly as possible. That way we'll know that you've got a problem. That doesn't mean that you're going to see somebody, you know, right away, but we will get there eventually, and that will allow us to track what's going on. If you're given a temporary service, and we're putting in place thousands of feet of hose a day. In some instances, we put in almost 500 feet to service the Marlin Apartments. We finally got it going last night about 8 o'clock after a full day's work with a 2.5-inch hose from 500 feet from a hydrant. But once those temporary services are in place, please, please, please keep them running, keep a tap running in the house, full bore, and don't stop until the city issues a notice to do otherwise. With that, Your Worship, if there are any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to try and address them.
So, Ken, the priority is vulnerable people that are in their homes, aged, medical issues, number one.
Correct.
Number two, keep the water running, even if it warms up outside, keep the water running because the frost is still there.
Absolutely.
And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, even at this point.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And we're talking days before we can get to some of the homes to try and...
Unfortunately, that is true,
So if you're in the vulnerable area, it's safer to have your water running than it is to lose service and not have service for days at a time.
Absolutely.
You talked about drinking water being available at our arenas, at our rec center, showers at the Y,
Yes.
water at the water depot up on the west side.
That's correct.
What happens if people have mobility issues and can't get to those showers, can't get to those waters? Are there other community groups or social services that are helping us out there? What's the plan there?
If we get difficulties with getting people to locations, we've got the specialty transit service that can provide assistance to people that'll get them to the Y. If there's a need for assistance, we'll find some means of getting them assistance.
So phone City Hall and we'll prepare or are
We'll do
prepared to
something, yes.
respond to it.
Yes, we
the
will.
Basic answer.
Yes, that's correct.
Good. Other questions? Councillor Lemon.
Two things. Number one, when the frost, which eventually will happen, gets out of the ground, is that not when you also have a lot of breaks and line issues as well?
That's correct.
So what we've already gone through, we're going to go through again, potentially.
Yes.
And I do have some good news for you.
I'll take any I can get.
In 18 days is the first day of spring. Lots of luck.
Understand that. Thank you.
And we're going to have a Wired and Willie Festival.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Anyone else? Good. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Your
the report. Please thank the staff for all the work they're doing. I know there's been extra staff called in and people pulled in from different departments to help the water crew, and it's I'm glad I'm not them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that along.
Okay, I've got two quick things that I'll cover in other business, looking at 20 after 10 o'clock. Quickly, CFOS is celebrating their 75th anniversary, which I think is kind of neat. At least two of you here have worked for Bayshore over the time I was in there today. In came Paul Latham with pictures of his father with Duke Ellington and with Louis Armstrong in the studio at CFOS, which was pretty neat. All of us have pretty neat memories from, some people maybe don't believe in Santa anymore, which I think is wrong, but all of us still believe in peekaboo.
Oh, yeah.
And I lived in Edmonton and thought peekaboo is just an international thing, and nobody had a clue what I was talking about. In fact, Ms. Corsi's looking right now going, who's peekaboo? Talk of the Town, Open Line. I think of all the things that have been on the air over the years. I can't imagine our community without CFOS through the 70s and 80s, I guess, when I was growing up as a child. So congratulations to them. I also want to thank all the media that have helped us out in the last few days. We're in here on Sunday putting together a press release and phoning people, trying to make sure that we got the message out as quickly as we could and as saturated into the community as we could on keeping your water running. And Bayshore CFOS certainly answered the telephone, the Dock, the Sun-Times, the Hub, Ann got something on, CKNX, Kirk got something on immediately onto websites and onto the air, and we really appreciate living in a community that maybe you pick on us once in a while, but it's pretty rare, and we certainly appreciate when you support us and help us out and get that message out in important situations like this, and we want to thank you for it. We also phoned the long-term care facilities yesterday, retirement homes. Sharon Edwards was in all afternoon, frankly, on her day off. Seniors apartments, making sure that they all got phoned to keep their water running and make sure that we don't have frozen pipes there. If they get into trouble, we're all really in trouble. So thanks to Sharon, thanks to all of you back in the corner, and That's my comments. So motion number 14, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Move that the committee rise and report.
All in favor? Carried. Number 15 is a resolution adopting proceedings of the Committee of the Whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There's no notice. Are there any notices of motion? No. Any new business by resolution? Seeing none. Number 18, bylaws.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kepke, that bylaw numbers 2015-020, 021, 022, 023, 024, 025, 026, 027, and 028 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Our business is complete. Thanks, everyone. It's a long night. Good work. Thank you. We're adjourned.